Lu Yu was called back home by a phone call from his mother. Upon arriving, he was shocked to see a former elementary school classmate waiting for him. And she was for months pregnant. Was she planning to find an honest man to take responsibility? But what about the paternity test report? Could it really be his fault? Lu Yu was completely confused. Chapter 1, A Fraudster. You little bastard, you're doing fine in everything except for studying. Now you've picked up the habit of fooling around outside. And now some girl has come looking for you. I'm giving you 10 minutes to get back here, or I'll cut off all ties with you. Haicheng. On People's Road, Lu Yu stared at the phone that had just been hung up, completely stunned. He swore to God, he had lived for 27 years, had been single his whole life, and never even held a girl's hand, let alone get involved with anyone. His romantic experience was purer than bottled water. A girl had come looking for him? Could this be some new scam? Was his mom being tricked? At this thought, Lu Yu panicked. He didn't waste any time thinking it over and quickly hailed a cab to rush home. Meanwhile, at Genshin Community, Building 3, Room 103, on the outer ring of Haicheng. Lu Yu's father, Lu Qinming, was busy working in the kitchen. In the living room, Lu Yu's mother, Wang Yun, was smiling broadly as she held a young girl's hand. Xiaozi, may I call you that? Xiaozi smiled back and answered, of course. I'll be calling you mom from now on, so you can call me Xiaozi. Wang Yun's face lit up with joy upon hearing this. She couldn't help but admire Xiaozi more and more as she looked at her. My daughter is such a sweetheart. Don't worry. If that brat dares to mistreat you, I'll break his legs. Don't. Xiaozi was startled by the comment and quickly interjected, well, you see, after we get married, if he loses his legs, how would the three of us live? Wang Yun laughed at Xiaozi's response but suddenly realized something was off. What did you just say? Three of us. Xiaozi blushed, lowered her head shyly, and said, the doctor said, I'm expecting triplets. Pfft. Wang Yun gasped in shock, her words becoming jumbled. Th3. Triplets. Xiaozi lowered her head and remained silent. Bang. At that moment, the door flew open, and Lu Yu rushed in, his footsteps loud and hurried. His voice arrived before he did. Mom, I've always kept myself clean. I've never even held a girl's hand. Please don't tell me you've been scammed, okay? Before Lu Yu could finish his sentence, he froze in place when he saw Xiaozi sitting on the couch. The woman in front of him was incredibly beautiful, more stunning than any celebrity. As a Douyin TikTok addict, Lu Yu knew all about makeup and beauty filters. But he immediately confirmed that this girl was not only natural but completely barefaced. Her beauty could easily surpass 99% of stars and online influencers. She had long, slender legs, a slightly fuller waist, and an enviable bust. She was the perfect combination of an angel's face and a devil's body. But this left Lu Yu utterly confused. Had scammers started investing this much into their schemes? Or maybe this stunning woman was tired of playing around and was planning to trick him into taking responsibility as an honest man. At this thought, Lu Yu was about to lose his temper. But before he could say anything, his mother slapped him on the back of the head. What are you talking about? Scam? Have you ever seen a scammer this pretty? She then awkwardly turned to Xiaozi. Oh, Xiaozi, this kid of mine never thinks before he speaks. Please don't take it personally. Xiaozi shook her head. It's fine. I can wait. I'm sure you will eventually fall in love with me. Lu Yu was utterly confused. Mom, don't you know me? I've always been home on time, never had a chance to fool around. This is definitely a scam. He turned to Xiaozi. Let me tell you, if you're looking for an honest man to take responsibility, you've come to the wrong place. You're talking nonsense. Before Lu Yu could finish, Wang Yun slapped him on the back again and shoved a document into his hand. Here's the paternity test. Open your eyes and look carefully. Is this your child? Lu Yu was even more dumbfounded now. Scammers were so professional nowadays. He had never had any children, but he couldn't help but flip open the paternity test and quickly examined it. The cover of the report had the official stamp of Haicheng Hospital's Paternity Test Center. This was the most reputable and authoritative center for paternity testing in Haicheng. But these days, fake stamps were easy to make. Lu Yu skimmed through the test report and sneered, walking over to Xiaozi. He casually sat next to her and said, "This paternity test must be cost a lot, huh? You really went all in. But do you think you can fool me with this?" Xiaozi looked at him with a calm smile. "You don't believe it? Hey, do you really think I do believe this?" "I know my own business better than anyone," Lu Yu said with a smug expression. Xiaozi smiled gently and stood up, turning around in front of him. "Can't you recognize me?" Lu Yu almost laughed out loud at her act. "What's this? A new trick? Isn't this a little outdated?" Xiaozi chuckled. Hee, Lu Yu, you're so slow." Hongsha City, Chougung Town, Maoqin Village Elementary School, Liang Zun's does that ring a bell? Liang Zun, Lu Yu's mind suddenly flashed with an image. He froze for a moment and then looked at the girl in front of him, dumbfounded. "You're the little girl who sat in front of me back then." Suddenly, memories from 20 years ago flooded back. Back then, although Hongsha City was the provincial capital, it was still a third-tier city. Chougung Town, which governed 27 natural villages, had only 8 elementary schools. Lu Yu and Liang Zun's attended Maoqin Village Elementary School together. Liang Zun's had sat in front of Lu Yu, and Lu Yu's first impression of her was that she was incredibly beautiful. His first thought was that if he teased her, she'd cry for a long time. From then on, he'd been mischievous, teasing Liang Zun's every day. Liang Zun's was quieter, either she would tolerate it, or she'd tell the teacher. But Lu Yu never changed his ways, and it wasn't until the second semester of first grade that something happened. One time, Lu Yu had gotten a lighter from somewhere and accidentally set Liang Zun's hair on fire. Luckily, the teacher noticed in time, or it could have been a disaster. After that, Liang Zun's transferred schools, and Lu Yu was so frightened that he changed his behavior and his grades improved. But what Lu Yu didn't know was that Liang Zun's had stayed at the same school all through middle and high school. She just kept her distance, while Lu Yu was fully focused on his studies, completely unaware of her presence. Now, after a long pause, Lu Yu finally snapped out of his thoughts and looked at Liang Zun's, bewildered. "But we were classmates. Even if I used to bully you, that was when we were kids. Why are you coming to my house and tricking my mom?" Liang Zun smiled gently at him, her eyes filled with affection. "The child is really yours. Do I need to lie to you? Impossible. We haven't seen each other in over 20 years. There's no way the child is mine." Lu Yu panicked, the last shred of guilt vanishing completely. Liang Zun's blinked and smiled. "Think again. For months ago, when you had dinner with your colleagues." Boom. The moment she mentioned this, something seemed to click in Lu Yu's mind. For months ago, he had been promoted and was in a great mood. After work, he treated his colleagues to dinner. He drank a lot, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in a hotel room. When he woke up, there was no one else in the room. He assumed a colleague had taken him there, and didn't think much of it. Could it be that Liang Zun's had been the one to take him to the hotel? But why? How could she have taken him there and slept with him? Liang Zun seemed to sense his thoughts. She casually pulled out her phone, opened the album, and showed him some photos. "Look, these are pictures from back then, plus a few pictures of us together. You can't deny it now, can you?" Then, with a mischievous smile, Liang Zun's leaned in closer and whispered, "I also have pictures of the bedsheets from that night. Do you want to see them?" Lu Yu was speechless, staring at Liang Zun's, his face filled with disbelief. "I almost ruined your life back then. You should hate me. Why are you?" "Of course, I hate you," Liang Zun said softly, her hand gently resting on her stomach. "But that's why I'm here. Triplets, you should really think about your future now." "Phut." Lu Yu almost spit out blood and his face turned pale. "Are scammers so professional now? They even have paternity test reports." Lu Yu didn't believe that he had a child, but he couldn't suppress his curiosity and picked up the report to read it. The cover of the report was the seal of the Haicheng Hospital Paternity Test Center. "This is the most authoritative and fair paternity test center in Haicheng. But nowadays, it's easy to forge a seal." Lu Yu casually flipped through the report, sneered and sat down next to Xiaozi, whispering, "This paternity test report will cost a lot of money, right? You guys are really expensive. But do you think you can trick me into taking over?" Xiaozi looked at Lu Yu's serious expression and couldn't help laughing. "You don't believe it? Har, do you think I can believe it? I don't know my own business, can I?" Lu Yu sneered. Xiao Zi smiled slightly, stood up and turned around in front of Lu Yu. Can you really not recognize me? Lu Yu was almost amused by this action. What? One plan failed and another one came. This routine is outdated, right? Xiao Zi burst into laughter. Har har, Lu Yu, you are really stupid. He he, Hongshan City, Chaoguang Town, Maotian Village Primary School, Liang Xuanzi, do you remember? What Liang Xian? Huh. A figure suddenly flashed in Lu Yu's mind, and he stared at Liang Xuanzi in front of him in amazement. Are you the little guy who sat in front of me back then? The distant memory emerged in Lu Yu's mind. 20 years ago. Although Hongshan City is the provincial capital, its economy is not developed and can only be regarded as a third-tier level. Chaoguang Town under Hongshan City has 27 natural villages under its jurisdiction, but only 8 primary schools. Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi studied in Maotian Village Primary School. At that time, Liang Xuanzi was sitting in front of Lu Yu. Lu Yu's first impression of Liang Xuanzi was that this girl was so beautiful. And his first thought was, will she cry for a long time if I hit her? Since then, he would tease Liang Xuanzi almost every day. Liang Xuanzi was more introverted, so she would either tolerate it herself or complain directly to the teacher. But Lu Yu had been naughty since he was a child. He was called to school several times, but he still did his own thing and did not repent. Until the second semester of the first grade, something happened. That time, Lu Yu played too much and got a lighter from somewhere, and actually burned Liang Xuanzi's hair. Fortunately, the teacher discovered it in time, otherwise the play between the children would have caused a disaster. Since then, Liang Xuanzi transferred to another school, and Lu Yu was also scared. From then on, he changed his temper and his academic performance soared. But Lu Yu didn't know that after entering junior high school and high school, Liang Xuanzi had been in the same school with him. It's just that Liang Xuanzi was hiding on purpose, and Lu Yu was fully devoted to studying and didn't know it at all. After a while, Lu Yu came back to his senses and looked at Liang Xuanzi with complicated eyes. No, we are classmates after all. Even if I hurt you before, that was when we were young. Why did you come to my house to lie to my mother? Liang Xuanzi looked at Lu Yu with a smile in the corner of her eyes. The child is really yours. Do I have to lie to you? How is it possible? We haven't seen each other for more than 20 years. The child can't be mine. Lu Yu was anxious, and the only remaining guilt in his heart disappeared. Liang Xuanzi blinked her big eyes and said with a smile, think about it carefully. 4 months ago, when you were having dinner with your colleagues. Boom. As soon as these words came out, Lu Yu's mind seemed to flash with lightning. 4 months ago, he was promoted and was very happy. He invited his colleagues to dinner after get off work. Because he was happy, he drank too much. When he woke up the next day, he was in a hotel. However, he was the only one in the room at that time, and he thought that a colleague had sent him to the hotel, so he didn't think much about it. Could it be Liang Xuanzi who sent him to the hotel at that time? But why? How could Liang Xuanzi send him to the hotel and have sex with him? Liang Xuanzi seemed to have guessed what Lu Yu was thinking, and took out her mobile phone, opened the album, and waved it in front of Lu. Hey, here are the photos from that time, and there are also photos of the two of us. You can't quibble now, right? At this point, Liang Xuanzi walked over mysteriously and whispered something that made Lu Yu's blood boil. I still have photos of the bed sheets from that time. Do you want to see them? Lu Yu was speechless. Looking at Liang Xuanzi, he asked with a tangled face, I almost ruined your life at that time. Shouldn't you hate me? Why did you? Of course I hate you. So I came to find you. Liang Xuanzi stroked her belly gently. Triplets, you should think about your good life in the future. Puff. Lu Yu almost died of bleeding, his face turned pale. Triplets. How to live in the future. Eating, drinking, defecating, and urinating, which one doesn't cost money. Tuition, living expenses, clothes, everything is indispensable. And there are 4 at once. The family emptied out the savings of 2 generations and barely bought a small 3-bedroom apartment in the city. How will the 3 children live when they grow up? Liang Xuanzi is already pregnant. The nutrition fee and prenatal checkup will all cost money. And the marriage and the gift. When Lu Yu thought of this, he was about to collapse. Then, he looked at Liang Xuanzi and said with a complicated expression, so, you are using this method to retaliate against me. Liang Xuanzi looked at him with a smile. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Are you happy? Surprised? It's more like shocking. Lu Yu finally understood the meaning of dying. After a long silence, Lu Yu looked at Liang Xuanzi unwillingly. You want me to be an honest person like this? No way. Come with me to do a paternity test again, Tilder. Chapter 2 Proposing Marriage 1. At the station. Liang Xuanzi's eyes were full of tears, and she had no intention of letting go of her hands. She just looked at Lu Yu with tears in her eyes. That expression broke Lu Yu's heart. Even Liang Hao, who was standing next to him, felt that he was an unforgivable bastard at this moment. Lu Yu couldn't help but reach out and embrace Liang Xuanzi in his arms, gently patting her back. Okay, dear, you go home first, I'll go pick you up after I put down my luggage at home, okay? Liang Xuanzi shook her head. No, I want to go home with you. Lu Yu smiled and turned her little head over, looked straight into her eyes, and reached out to touch her nose. It's not like I won't go over, and you won't go back to your parents' home in the future, right? I promise you, I will go to your house to propose marriage in 3 hours at most, okay? Liang Xuanzi saw that there was no room for maneuver, and stamped her feet angrily. We agreed that it would be no more than 3 hours, or I will bite you. Okay, no more than 3 hours. Liang Xuanzi then let go of Lu Yu, and then walked towards Lian Hao, looking back every few steps, but just when she walked to Lian Hao, she kicked him directly. It's all your fault, Liang Hao. No, this is the rule here, and it was asked by my parents. Why are you blaming me? After looking at Lu Yu with resentment, Liang Hao quickly followed. Sister, be careful, you still have a baby in your belly, don't walk so fast, I'm going to die, sister. Looking at the brother and sister walking away, Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief, and took the suitcase with a smile. Dad, Mom, let's go back too. Originally, Lu Yu thought, it's just 3 hours, no big deal. But when he and Liang Xuanzi separated, he realized how difficult these 3 hours were. Almost in the first hour after they separated, he inexplicably felt a chill in his heart, as if something was missing. After 2 hours, he began to think about Liang Xuanzi constantly, thinking about the previous memories, thinking about whether this girl would be wronged at home, and completely forgot that Liang Xuanzi was actually the little princess of that family. After 2.5 hours, Lu Yu could no longer sit still. He glanced at Wang Yun, who was packing in the house, and shouted, Mom, are the things ready? When are we leaving? Okay, where's your dad? Let him drive. Wang Yun came out of the house and took out 2 prepared marriage proposal gifts. One was filled with candy and melon seeds, with a big red book in the middle with the words, marriage certificate, written on it. The other was filled with banknotes. These money were prepared by Lu Qinming yesterday, a total of 99,999 yuan, meaning long and long. It's not that they don't want to give more, but there's no need. The most important thing is that the most they can give is only 66,600. They have already raised the standard by 1/3. If they give more, it will cause gossip, which is not worth the loss. Here we are, get in the car. Wang Yun had just finished speaking when Lu Qinming parked the car directly at the gate and got off the driveway. I've already put the cigarettes, alcohol, tea, and some snacks in there. Let's hurry up and don't delay our daughter's time. Lu Qinming bought his car yesterday, in full, and it was also a Hongqi, but it was a Hongqi HS5, and it was still on a temporary license plate. Moving things, getting in the car, starting, and setting off. When the car drove out, Lu Yu's mood gradually recovered, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously raised a beautiful arc. At the same time, Chaoguan Town. Liang Xuanzi lay listlessly on the sofa, holding her mobile phone in her hand, staring at the time on it. Liang Langdao sat opposite, holding a cigarette in his mouth. Because Liang Xuanzi was pregnant, he didn't light it. The expression on his face was as complicated as it could be. Especially after seeing Liang Xuanzi's expression, he felt even more sad. He couldn't even figure out whether it was the pig from someone else's family that dug up his cabbage, or his cabbage forced itself into the pig's mouth from someone else's family. But no matter what, he knew very well that his sweet little cotton-padded jacket had flown away. After Liang's mother Zhu Gailing finished cooking a large table of dishes, she came out with a handsome man. Looking at the father and daughter, she was so angry that she laughed. First, she walked to Liang Xuanzi and tapped her forehead. Okay, she called just now and said she has already left. It's only been a short while, but she's already waiting for her husband to leave. What's wrong? Don't you plan to let Xiaoyu go to work in the future? Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up. did she really leave? Zhu Guiling. Well, this girl didn't catch the point. Forget it. This is the couple's business, and she can't control too much. What's more, this girl will know it later. Shaking her head without answering Liang Xuanzi, she walked to Liang Langdao and sat down, slapping him on the leg. What are you doing? The in-laws will be here soon. Who are you looking at with a sullen face? Don't you want your daughter to be happy? Who said that? Liang Langdao was anxious, but then he sat back down and sighed. I'm just a little upset. After all, I raised such a big daughter, and now someone took her away with the basin. I have to be happy. Just tell me, what's wrong with me being depressed now? Zhu Guiling was choked to death by his words. She raised her hand and touched his forehead, and pressed him directly on the sofa. Okay, you are wronged, then you will be happy if your daughter doesn't get married in this life, right? Liang Langdao muttered and turned his head. I didn't say that. No, get up quickly and help me bring out the dishes. Really, day after day, your daughter is so happy now, but you are not happy. What are you thinking about all day? Hurry up. After Zhu Guiling finished speaking, she stood up, glanced at the side-lying bed, frowned and said, Xiao Hao, what are you doing in the room? Come out quickly. Liang Hao walked out with panda eyes. Mom, you are still talking about me. How can I face people later? Har har har. Did your sister beat you? Puff. Okay, I'll go in and laugh for a while. Looking at Zhu Guiling's back, Liang Hao was dumbfounded and pointed at himself. No, Mom, you really don't care about my sister. Don't tell me, your brother-in-law will come later. Go and complain to your brother-in-law. Liang Hao. In the living room. Liang Hao is doubting his life. For the nth time in his life, he doubted whether he was his parents' biological child. But thinking that his elder sister was getting married today, he finally felt better. When his elder sister was not at home, he did not believe that you would treat me like this. Just when he was looking forward to a better life, Liang Langdao suddenly came over and slapped him on the head. What are you thinking about? Go and call your second uncle and fourth uncle's family. Don't wait for them to come. We don't even have anyone to take the things. Liang Hao's beautiful vision just now was shattered into slag under this slap. He walked out with a sigh and glared at Liang Xuanzi before leaving. Fortunately, Liang Xuanzi was now completely immersed in the happiness that Lu Yu was about to come, so she did not notice his eyes. Otherwise, it was 12:45 in the afternoon, less than 10 minutes before the time agreed by Lin Hao and Liang Xuanzi. A shout came from downstairs. The marriage proposal is coming. Liang Langdao and Zhu Guiling, Liang Xuanzi's great aunt, fourth uncle and fourth aunt all ran downstairs, along with Liang Hao and the two sons of the eldest uncle. Liang Xuanzi wanted to go down, but was stopped by Liang Lele, the sister of the fourth uncle. Sister, you are pregnant now, wait here. Running up and down. Do you want to worry your brother-in-law to death? Go tilde, am I as fragile as you say? Liang Xuanzi shrugged, and then pinched Liang Lele's face. Huh? It's quite fun. Liang Lele's eyes lit up, and she slapped Liang Xuanzi's hand away. Tell me the truth, does your brother-in-law like to pinch your face? Liang Lele's eyes began to dodge. Liang Lele pursed her lips and smiled softly, pulling Liang Xuanzi to stand up. Although we can't go down, we can still watch from here. Downstairs. The red flag car stopped downstairs in the community. Knowing that the daughter of the Liang family was going out, almost half of the people in the community came. The young girls gathered in circles. There was nothing they could do. Who made Liang Xuanzi so beautiful? There were countless young people in the community who regarded Liang Xuanzi as a goddess. Chapter 3, Proposing Marriage 2. Well, now the goddess is going to be taken away by someone. How can they be willing without seeing it? After turning off the engine, Lu Qinming was the first to jump down. After taking a glance, he took out a pack of cigarettes and walked around, finally stopping in front of Liang Langdao. My dear relatives. Liang Langdao took the box handed over by Lu Qinming and forced a dry smile on his face. At this time, Zhu Guiling also pulled Wang Yin over and kicked Liang Langdao's calf with a smile. What are you doing? Greet people. Liang Langdao hissed and nodded to Lu Qinming. It's good that you are here. Let's go upstairs and talk. Lu Qinming nodded happily and said, Okay, let's move the things first. At this time, Lu Yu came over, looked at Liang Langdao and Zhu Guiling, took a deep breath, and then bowed heavily to them. Dad, Mom, thank you for raising such a good girl like Xiaozi. Don't worry, I will cherish her with my life in the future. Cherish her, protect her, love her. This was the first time that Liang Langdao formally looked at Lu Yu, and Lu Yu's appearance and temperament made Liang Langdao fall in love with him at first sight. The smile on his face was no longer dry, and it softened completely. He raised his hand and patted Lu Yu's shoulder. You kid, sneaking around, do you know that when I first heard about you two, I almost took a knife to Haicheng to chop you? Lu Yu smiled awkwardly. Although it was Liang Xuanzi's fault, he had to take it. If his future daughter did this, he would definitely not just think about it. After seeing Lu Yu, Liang Langdao felt much better and turned around and said, Xiaohao, what are you doing? Help your brother-in-law move the things up. Here they come. Liang Hao was stunned for a moment, and then he quickly called the two brothers of his uncle's family to move things. There were some ordinary snacks and gifts in front, but when the basket of red and green banknotes was brought out, the onlookers were all stunned, and the discussion followed. Oh my god, Tilder, how much money is this? 100,000, right? That's so much for the marriage proposal. What should we do next? I heard that the old Lu family is from Maoqian village. It seems that there is a real dragon there. What real dragon or not? I just know that the girl of the Liang family was married off. The onlookers were stunned, and Liang Langtao's family was also stunned. It's not that they have never seen so much money, but their family still has hundreds of thousands of savings, but that is after all a savings, far less shocking than cash. The most important thing is, the betrothal gifts and marriage proposals here are not so much. Upstairs, Liang Lele turned around excitedly, put her arm around Liang Xuanzi's shoulder and jumped up and down. Sister, so much money, brother-in-law treats you so well. Dong Tilder. Liang Xuanzi knocked on her sister's forehead unhappily. What are you talking about? Can love be measured by money? Dead girl, I tell you, if I find out that you have become a gold digger in the future, I will deal with you. Our Liang family doesn't want such people, do you know? Slightly Tilder. Liang Lele stuck out her tongue, nodded, and took Liang Xuanzi's arm. Sister, does brother-in-law have any younger brothers? Introduce them to me. Liang Xuanzi was stunned, then gritted her teeth and said, no. At this time, there was a movement at the door, and Liang Xuanzi couldn't wait to run over. When the door opened, her sight was immediately locked on Lu Yu, revealing a silly smile. This scene once again broke the heart of Liang Langdao, the old father, and snorted softly, turned around and greeted others, out of sight, out of mind. Lu Yu also saw Liang Xuanzi, walked over with a smile, and whispered, I'm not late, am I? Liang Xuanzi raised her neck proudly, you're allowed. But after that, she threw herself into Lu Yu's arms and said aggrievedly, I miss you so much. Lu Yu gently hugged her and whispered, I miss you too, I urged your mother-in-law several times at home. Really? Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up, Mumar, husband, you are so nice. As soon as their voice fell, their whole living room was silent in an instant, and everyone's eyes were all focused on him. Lu Yu opened his mouth, and finally all his words turned into an awkward smile, just, so panic. With the previous beginning, the following things went smoothly. The two parties formally exchanged marriage certificates and set a wedding date. At the same time, Liang Langdao and Zhu Gailing each gave Lu Yu a red envelope of 11,110 yuan, which meant that Lu Yu was the son-in-law they had chosen from thousands of people. Actually, they originally prepared only 1,110 yuan in red envelopes. It was not that they did not want to take too much, but they felt it was unnecessary. After all, it was the same here. But after Liang Xuanzi came back, they found out after asking that the amount given was 11,110 yuan, which meant that Liang Xuanzi was the daughter-in-law chosen by their family. Since that was the case, they naturally could not lose face. Not to mention that Lu Yu actually got 100,000 yuan for marriage proposal this time. Although their Liang family was not a wealthy family, they were not the kind of people who would sell their daughters. In the end, all the money had to be returned as a dowry. Whether Lu Yu and his family wanted it or not was one thing, but their attitude must be there. After lunch, Liang Langdao and Lu Qinming went to the families of Liang Xuanzi's uncle and fourth uncle. While they were out, Wenyan took out the household registration booklet from the bedroom and put it heavily into Liang Xuanzi's hand. Girl, go and get the certificate with Yu. Liang Xuanzi tightened the household registration booklet. It was not until this moment that she suddenly remembered that after getting the certificate, her household registration would be moved from the Liang family to the Lu family. From then on, this would only be her mother's home, not her home anymore. Mom, Liang Xuanzi hugged Zhu Guiling with red eyes and sobbed softly. Zhu Guiling's eyes were also a little red. After all, the daughter she had raised for more than 20 years was someone else's from today. That kind of feeling, you will never understand if you have never experienced it. Patting Liang Xuanzi's back gently, Zhu Guiling held back her tears and smiled. Why are you crying? Today is your big day for engagement, be happy, and this place is not far from Haicheng, just more than 3 hours by high-speed rail. Remember to come back more often in the future. Liang Hao also quietly walked to Lu Yu and whispered, Brother-in-law, you must be nice to my sister in the future, otherwise I will find you to drink blood. Lu Yu put away his smile and said solemnly, Don't worry, no one can hurt her, including me. Liang Hao raised his hand and hit Lu Yu's chest. Forget it, my sister has chosen you, so let's do it, I'll go back to the house first. After Liang Hao left, Zhu Guiling took Liang Xuanzi and walked over, solemnly placed Liang Xuanzi's hand in Lu Yu's palm, and smiled and said, Son-in-law, my girl will rely on you to take care of her in the future, go. Thank you, Mom, I will definitely love her well. Lu Yu tightly held Liang Xuanzi's hand and looked at her tenderly. Liang Xuanzi sobbed a few times before she lowered her head and leaned on Lu Yu's arms. Husband. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At the door of the marriage registration office, Liang Xuanzi had recovered her emotions at this time, holding 2 red books and showing a silly smile. Ding! It is detected that the host and the target person are married. The happiness value of the target person has broken through the sky. A set of Shinjusu embroidery treasures, a set of 9 heavens dragon and phoenix robes, is obtained. I wish the host good luck in marriage. Note, the 9 heavens dragon and phoenix robes have been stored in the Yunding mansion villa, and the host can collect it by himself. 9 heavens dragon and phoenix robe. Is it the legendary Suzhou embroidery treasure? The reason why it is called a legend is that it is said that this set of dragon and phoenix robes was specially customized by Emperor Xiaozong of the Ming dynasty for his queen. As we all know, Emperor Xiaozong Zhu Yutang of the Ming dynasty only had one wife in his life. He was also the only emperor in the history of Shinju who had only one wife. Moreover, the emperor and his queen had a very deep relationship. Although he was an emperor, he lived with Queen Zhang every day, just like an ordinary couple. This was simply a clear stream among clear streams in an era when people focused on passing on the family line and having 3 wives and 4 concubines was rampant. 9 heavens dragon and phoenix robe was specially made by the Suzhou embroidery master at the time when Emperor Xiaozong ascended the throne and conferred the title to Queen Zhang. However, there was only a legend, and there was no record of it later. Therefore, Lu Yu always thought that this was just a fictitious thing, which was fabricated by people at that time to show off the relationship between Zhu Yutang and Queen Zhang. Now the system suddenly gave him such a reward, so, are these legends true? Chapter 4 Ancestor Worship. Suddenly, the flash came on, pulling Lu Yu back from his brainstorming. Looking at Liang Xuanzi, who was as happy as a child, he smiled happily, tightened his arms and said softly, From today on, you are my legitimate wife. Yeah. Liang Xuanzi nodded happily, and then continued to fiddle with her phone. Soon, she clicked on the moments she had posted and showed it to Lu Yu. Hee, take a look, husband. Is it pretty? I'm so envious of Wenwen. Lu Yu smoothed her long hair and said, You tease Wenwen like this every day. Aren't you afraid that she will break up with you one day? No, Tilda, she won't do that. Besides, I'm helping her. If I don't stimulate her like this, with her lazy personality, I don't know when she will be single. She will thank me in the future. Tilda. Liang Xuanzi raised her head proudly, with an expression that said, Please praise me soon, which made Lu Yu completely unable to hold back. He laughed and picked her up. Yes, she will thank you later, but now, we have to go back. Liang Xuanzi narrowed her eyes and nestled in Lu Yu's arms with great enjoyment. Okay. After returning to the community again, Lu Yu's mentality has changed a lot. The most important thing is that the big stone in his heart has fallen, and he feels a lot more relaxed. The 2 families sat together in the living room, chatting and laughing, and gradually put aside the sadness of the upcoming separation, especially Liang Hao, who had just acted like a loving brother to Liang Xuanzi, but now he started to complain to Lu Yu, pointing to the 2 dark circles under his eyes, and angrily accusing Liang Xuanzi of crimes. Liang Xuanzi, who was standing next to her, gnashed her teeth when she heard this. If Lu Yu hadn't held her in his arms, she would have let this stinky brother know what an elder sister's authority was. Lu Yu stroked Liang Xuanzi gently and said with a smile, I heard that you are a good student. Have you decided which school to go to? Haicheng University. Liang Hao was stunned for a moment, then his eyes were firm. I have to go over to see you. Lu Yu was slightly stunned, then burst out laughing. Okay, if you are admitted to Haicheng University, brother-in-law will give you a house near Haicheng University. Night. Maotian Village, Lu family. Husband, pinch me. Liang Xuanzi lay in Lu Yu's arms, holding the marriage certificate in her hands, with a little confusion in her eyes. Lu Yu pinched her face, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Does it hurt? Liang Xuanzi's confused eyes lit up instantly, and she kept nodding. It hurts. After saying that, she turned over and lay in Lu Yu's arms. We are really married, it's great, it's like a dream. Seeing the restless Liang Xuanzi in his arms, Lu Yu was frightened and quickly held her still. Oh my dear, please be quiet. If your mother-in-law sees you, you will be a widow. Liang Xuanzi stopped humming, but had no intention of getting out of Lu Yu's arms. At this time, Wang Yun came out of the kitchen and looked at them with an aunt's smile. You two stop making trouble and go to bed early. We still have to go to worship our ancestors tomorrow. Lu Yu was slightly stunned. No, are you really going? Hey, what's wrong with you, kid? How can something like this be fake? Wang Yun was so angry that she laughed. She picked up the broom beside her and prepared to come over. Lu Yu stood up, hugged Liang Xuanzi and ran. I know, Mom, you should go to bed early too, good night. Liang Xuanzi lay in Lu Yu's arms and giggled, her happiness index continuing to soar. In just a short while, Lu Yu once again won nearly 2 million in cash rewards and 3 points of physical fitness. The next day, as soon as it was getting light outside, Lu Yu opened his eyes under the huge biological clock, glanced at the lovely girl sleeping soundly beside him, gently touched her face, got up, and washed. When Wang Yun returned to the living room, she had already prepared breakfast. She glanced at Lu Yu, who came in and smiled. Is Xiaozi still sleeping? Lu Yu hummed, and walked straight to the dining table. Looking at the side dishes on the table, he couldn't help but give Wang Yun a thumbs up. Mom, I finally figured it out. My son was picked up, right? Otherwise, why did our family have such a sloppy breakfast in the past? Get out of here. Eat it or not. I'll go call your dad, and the three of us will be there later. With that, Wang Yun walked towards their room. Lu Yu's hand holding the chopsticks paused, and then decisively put down the chopsticks, stood up and walked towards the bedroom. After all, Liang Xuanzi was now the daughter-in-law of their Lu family. What would it mean if she didn't go to worship the ancestors? Although there is a local custom that pregnant women are not allowed to visit graves for fear that the bad luck of the ancestors will affect the child, Lu Yu still decided to tell Liang Xuanzi since they have all received modern education. But before Lu Yu got there, Liang Xuanzi yawned and walked out of the bedroom. When she saw Lu Yu, she came over in a daze, fell into Lu Yu's arms, and pouted, "Hubby, naughty." Lu Yu chuckled when he heard this, lowered his head and took a sip, then scratched her messy long hair. Why are you up so early? Liang Xuanzi sobered up a little, raised her hand and drew circles on Lu Yu's chest. Today we have to worship our ancestors. I'm the newcomer in the family, so I have to go and say hello to Grandpa and Grandma. Woohoo Tilder, it smells so good. Did Mom prepare breakfast? Little foodie, go wash your face and come out to eat. Okay, I love you. Liang Xuanzi walked into the room happily. 7 o'clock in the morning. In the yard, Wang Yun looked at Liang Xuanzi with some worry. My daughter, why don't you just rest at home? It will be the same if you come over after the baby is 1 month old. Liang Xuanzi grabbed Wang Yun's hand and said coquettishly, Oh, Mom, I know, it's okay. Besides, it's not appropriate for me not to visit Grandpa and Grandma on my first day home. Besides, the baby in my belly is their great-grandchildren, and they will definitely protect the babies. Wang Yun kicked Lu Qinming. Old Lu, say something too. Lu Qinming's mouth twitched slightly. I think Xiaozi is right. Wang Yun was choked by this sentence, but after thinking about it, she did not object. In the end, she added a coat for Liang Xuanzi and muttered something to herself, which made Lu Qin's eyes roll up when he understood. The Lu family's cemetery is in the fields north of the village, in a large piece of wasteland. Except for Lu Yu's grandparents, all the direct ancestors of the entire Maotian village are buried here. So after arriving here, Lu Yu first took Liang Xuanzi to recognize people, and then took her to the grave of his grandparents. Lu Qinming had already arranged the offerings, while Wang Yun lit some paper money and muttered in a low voice, Dad, Mom, don't worry, I'm taking care of old Lu. Yu Yu has grown up and married a wife who is very beautiful and sensible. She is also pregnant with our baby. By the end of this year, you will be the great-grandfather and great-grandmother. By the way, Yu Yu is a promising child and can make a lot of money. He has a big house and a car in Haicheng. Now he has a beautiful, gentle and sensible wife. Life is getting better and better. Dad, Mom, don't be reluctant to spend money over there. If you are gone, please send a dream. As she spoke, Wang Yun's eyes turned red. Because Lu Qinming is an only child, Wang Yun was very well taken care of after she came here. Lu Yu's grandparents really treated Wang Yun as their own daughter. Although the old couple passed away early, they had a deep relationship with Wang Yun. Lu Qinming didn't say anything. After bowing to his grandparents, he sat beside them and smoked. His eyes were red, and even the fingers holding the cigarette were shaking. Lu Yu pulled Liang Xuanzi over and kowtowed 4 times respectfully to the grave. This was also the custom here. Gods kowtow 3 times and ghosts kowtow 4 times. It means that gods kowtow 3 times and ghosts kowtow 4 times. Otherwise, the etiquette would be incomplete and would bring bad luck. Wang Yun sat in front of the grave, talking about her inner thoughts for more than half an hour, and then she started to pack up her things. She slapped Lu Qinming in the face and said, "Let's go. Didn't we agree to go to Uncle's house today?" Lu Qinming uttered a sigh, turned around, brushed the dirt off his clothes, and looked at the grave. "Dad, Mom, we're leaving now and will come to see you again on October 1st. After leaving the cemetery, Lu Yu realized that Liang Xuanzi was not in a good mood. Her eyes were red and her brain was buzzing. He hurriedly whispered, "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Liang Xuanzi shook her head and looked at Lu Yu with tears in her eyes. "Husband, I will be a good daughter-in-law like my mother-in-law in the future, really." Lu Yu suddenly realized and then broke through his defense. Chapter 5, Showing Off Wealth 1. In Shinju, conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law have existed since ancient times. Only a very small number of people can truly live in harmony. At least in the entire Maoqian village, Lu Yu knows of no more than 3 families. Of course, most people can't tell what's going on the surface, but those who secretly plot against their wives and mothers-in-law are really. As for Wang Yun, I don't know how many girls who got married at the same time as her were envious of her. Therefore, the conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is not unsolvable, but there are too many factors involved. That's why Lu Yu was surprised and broke down after hearing Liang Xuanzi's words. After all, when it comes to conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, the man caught in the middle suffers the most. On one side is his biological mother, and on the other side is his biological wife. No matter what he does, it seems to be wrong. Most men have their backbones broken and their tempers worn out by such things, and eventually they become indistinguishable from the crowd. However, Lu Yu believed that Liang Xuanzi could do it, and he also believed in Wang Yun, because Lu Yu's grandmother had walked the path ahead, and Wang Yun had never suffered any grievances in her life, especially in the Lu family, so she would definitely treat Liang Xuanzi as her own daughter. Liang Xuanzi's character is unquestionable. Although a little blind, Lu Yu initially believed in the system and later believed in his own feelings. Compared to the system, he was more willing to believe in himself. Between the two of them, one is willing to love the other, and the other is grateful, so the probability of a conflict between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is not even 0.1%. Taking a deep breath, Lu Yu raised his hand and touched the top of Liang Xuanzi's head, smiling and nodding. "I believe you will become the most gentle and virtuous daughter-in-law in the world." Liang Xuanzi's face was more serious than ever before, and she nodded heavily at Lu Yu. "Yes." In the passenger seat, Wang Yun felt warm in her heart. Her daughter-in-law was sensible, and her life as a mother-in-law would be easier in the future, so her feelings for Liang Xuanzi deepened. I gently poked Lu Qinming who was driving, and so that Lu Qinming also had a smile on his face. A warm atmosphere filled the entire car. After returning home, Lu Qinming and Wang Yun went to the house of Lu Yu's second grandfather, Lu Qinming's uncle, while Lu Yu was left behind to take care of Liang Xuanzi. It would be unjustifiable for them not to go to worship their ancestors, but there is no need for them to visit relatives. The main thing is that Wang Yun is worried about Liang Xuanzi. How many quadruplets are there in the whole country? Although they are only 4 months old, Wang Yun can't help but worry about them. Lu Qinming had the same attitude. He believed that he could see Lu Yu at any time, and Lu Yu's second grandfather was in good health, so he could just see him at the end of the year. Lu Yu had no objection to this. They would come back during the Chinese New Year in the past. Although they had not stayed here for long, they were not unfamiliar with the place, so there was no need to rush now. Liang Xuanzi wanted to go, but was forcibly suppressed by the family of three. In the living room, Liang Xuanzi was watching videos on her mobile phone out of boredom, while Lu Yu was helping her cook some nourishing broth in the kitchen. With his master-level cooking skills, all of these were easy for Lu Yu. But just when Lu Yu was about to take the last step, Liang Xuanzi's scream suddenly came from the living room, and he was so scared that he almost threw the pot lid away. He quickly covered the pot and rushed out. "Wife, what's wrong?" Lu Yu was stunned. He saw Liang Xuanzi sitting on the sofa, staring at her phone blankly. Confused, Lu Yu walked behind Liang Xuanzi and followed her line of sight, only to find that she was reading a piece of news. The news headline is quite scary. Fanglong Group announced that it has fully mastered the 5-nanometer lithography machine technology and will enter the trial production stage from now on. Below are some professional terminology information about Fanglong Group's 5-nanometer lithography technology. But what shocked Liang Xuanzi was not these, but the words of the video shooter at the end of the video. So this is great news. After the stock market opened today, Fanglong Group's stock price hit the daily limit in just 10 minutes. If Fanglong Group can really come up with a complete 5-nanometer lithography machine this time, then this company will undoubtedly become the new world's top group. Of course. Lu Yu didn't listen to the rest of the conversation. If Liang Xuanzi had reacted, she would have looked up at Lu Yu, who was so close to her. "Husband, have you become richer?" Well, he is indeed richer now. According to the current price trend of Fanglong Group's stock, there will be no problem in doubling his assets. Moreover, he gave Yu Haohan complete technical information. As long as the materials were up to standard, there would be no problem in making a 5-nanometer lithography machine. By then, Fanglong Group will be the first company in the world to independently develop and manufacture lithography machines. Even if Fanglong Group has no intention of monopolizing, it cannot change this situation, at least not in a short period of time. And he holds 45% of the shares of Fanglong Group. How much money will he have by then? Hundreds of billions. Still. But soon Lu Yu was relieved, chuckled and touched Ding Liang Boy's forehead. "No matter how valuable the stocks are, they are just stocks. All I can get are dividends, so just take a look at these. HMPH tilde baby, be happy." Liang Xuanzi refused to give in, and suddenly kissed Lu Yu on the face, grinning foolishly. "Hee, I will be the wife of a billionaire soon. Hee tilde husband, can I go show off my wealth to Wen?" Lu Yu curled his lips. "As long as you are not afraid of scaring her to death, then go ahead and show off. Also, don't be so startled next time. I almost blew up the kitchen just now." Slightly tilde, Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue guiltily and grabbed Lu Yu's hand flatteringly. "Baby is wrong, husband, do you want to hit the baby?" Lu Yu opened his mouth and pinched her face with both anger and laughter. "Okay, I forgive you, watch the video, the soup will be ready soon." Looking at Lu Yu's back, Liang Xuanzi felt like she had fallen into a honey pot. She gently raised her hand and placed it on her belly, and said proudly, "My babies, is mommy awesome? Right? You think mommy is awesome too, right? Hee, let's go and piss off your aunt, okay?" Having said this, she gently pressed her belly and continued to talk to herself. "I knew you would agree, mommy loves you, well." At the same time, Hai Cheng, Xu Wenyao, who was sleeping, suddenly felt a little cold and shivered violently. She casually touched the kicked-off quilt and rolled herself up. But before she could fall asleep again, her cell phone rang. The ding-dong sound made Xu Wenwen upset. She fumbled to get the phone in her hand and shouted without opening her eyes, "Who is it? You are disturbing my sweet dreams so early in the morning. Are you leaving me no chance to live? Are you asking for trouble?" After saying that, she threw the phone out again. But what she didn't expect was that the ding-dong sound was still continuing. Xu Wenwen screamed and sat up with her eyes wide open. She found her cell phone and held it in her hand. Just as she was about to start cursing, she found that it was a message from Liang Xuanzi. The message was still ringing, but there were already more than 20 messages in front of it. Seeing this, Xu Wenwen sobered up a little and curiously opened the chat interface. "Minmin, let me show you something. But first, don't be surprised. There are pictures attached." "Eh? I forgot you didn't understand, so let me explain it to you. Do you know what this is? An equity transfer agreement. Do you know what company it belongs to? Fanglong Group tilde. Hey, are you a little surprised? I'm telling you in secret, this is my husband's. Guess how many shares my husband has? I don't think you can guess it either, so I'll have to kindly tell you, it's 45%. Oh my god, it's like a dream, you know. I'm a billionaire, it's so big, are you surprised or not? Lie tilde, did I say too much? Why don't you reply to my message? Are you still sleeping? You big fool, why are you sleeping? Get up and have fun, or I'll come to Haicheng and beat you to death. Looking at the message, Xu Wenwen shook her head, thinking that she was still asleep and was probably dreaming. Yes, I must be dreaming, otherwise, how could Liang Xuanzi, that big fool, become a rich wife? I am so worried about her. I weakly grabbed a strand of hair and pulled it out, and in an instant. It hurts so much. Xu Wenwen was in so much pain that tears came out. Chapter 6, Showing Off Wealth 2. But the next second, Xu Wenwen was stunned, it hurts. So I'm not dreaming? This damn girl really became a rich man's wife? Lu Yu, my old classmate, is a billionaire. Are you kidding me? Thinking of this, Xu Wenwen's sleepiness disappeared in an instant, and she couldn't wait to open the video call. But the call request was rejected as soon as it was made. She actually refused. The next moment. Maotian village, Lu family. Liang Xuanzi curled up on the sofa, watching voice messages pop up one after another. The length of each message was more than 40 seconds, and several were even 60 seconds. She was so scared that she almost threw her phone away. After sending more than 30 voice messages, Xu Wenwen called again via video. This time Liang Xuanzi didn't dare to refuse, otherwise who knows what that idiot would do. He might even come directly to Hongshan to find her. You big idiot, what do you mean? You woke me up and didn't answer my video call. Do you want to die? As soon as the video was connected, Xu Wenwen started roaring like a mad cerebellum rotten. Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue and winked playfully. You won't, my husband won't let me. As soon as these words came out, Xu Wenwen's face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. She glared at Liang Xuanzi with gritted teeth and said, You think you are the only one with a husband, right? Believe it or not, I can find one in a minute. Liang Xuanzi nodded and agreed. After all, Xu Wenwen was very beautiful. Although her figure was a little chubby, she still had a lot of people who liked her. But before Xu Wenwen could breathe a sigh of relief, Liang Xuanzi said, But you didn't find a better husband than my husband. Xu Wen almost vomited blood. She really couldn't refute this. Lu Yu is not only handsome, but also has a great demeanor and a good way of dealing with people. The most important thing is, well. Xu Wenwen thought of the purpose of the call, and suddenly came back to her senses, and said in shock, What you just told me is true. Lu Yu is really a shareholder of Fanglong Group. A billionaire. Liang Xuanzi raised her head proudly, Are you scared? He, isn't my husband awesome? Xu Wenwen has lost the ability to think. After all, anyone would be shocked when they suddenly hear that their old classmate has become a trillionaire. No, even a billionaire, not to mention this is even more terrifying. A trillion, what does that mean? Liang Xuanzi was shocked when there was no response from Xu Wenwen for a long time. She had originally planned to tell Xu Wenwen about the things about Jingting Building and MAF, but she had also suppressed it. She was afraid that if she continued to talk, Xu Wenwen would not be able to bear the stimulation and would collapse. After being silent for more than 30 seconds, Xu Wenwen rolled her eyes and said, Don't bother with me. I need to calm down now. The call ended as soon as the words were spoken. Liang Xuanzi looked at the phone that had returned to the chat interface, and a trace of worry flashed through her heart. Could this girl really be scared? Should I call for first aid just in case? Just as Liang Xuanzi was thinking about whether to call the emergency number, Haicheng, Xu Wenwen kept closing her eyes, opening her eyes, and closing her eyes. After repeating this for more than a dozen times, she gave up, sat up, and said through gritted teeth, You idiot, you came to me to show off your wealth, right? Even my best friend is as stupid as you. After saying that, she quickly sent a message to Liang Xuanzi. In Maotian village, Liang Xuanzi was about to make a call when she saw the message and quickly clicked it. Stupid, you are showing off your wealth in front of me, right? We'll talk about it when you come back. If you don't treat me to a month's meal this time, we're not done. And I can't just go easy on you, it has to be a high-end hotel. I'm going to eat you out of money. Puff tilde. Liang Xuanzi smiled, replied casually, then jumped off the sofa, ran to the kitchen, clung to the door frame, half of her head was exposed, and she blinked her playful big eyes at Lu Yu. "Hubby, I told when." Lu Yu looked at her with a smile, and then she asked me to treat her to a meal in a high-end hotel. Humph, am I someone who would give in so easily? Tsk tilde, Liang Xuanzi said guiltily, her eyes wandering around. Lu Yu was so adorable by her expression, his eyes were full of doting. Okay. Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up. Isn't my husband angry? Lu Yu was stunned. What are you angry about? Yer tilde long live my husband, I love you. Liang Xuanzi made a heart shape with her hands and ran away quickly. After drinking the soup, Lu Qinming and Wang Yun had not returned yet. Liang Xuanzi, who was a little bored, simply dragged Lu Yu out of the door and headed straight for Maoqian Village Primary School. In recent years, Hongshan City has continued to develop and its educational strength has been increasing, but the geographical location of Maoqian Village Primary School is too special. So at a time when the surrounding rural primary schools are gradually disappearing, the teaching staff of this primary school is constantly increasing, and it has assumed the responsibility of educating students in the 6 villages of Chaguang Town. More than 10 minutes later, Liang Xuanzi stood silently at the entrance of the primary school, looking at the school that had completely lost its original structure, with a deep sense of loss on her face. Lu Yu chuckled and touched the top of her head. Do you still want to go in? Liang Xuanzi shook her head at first, then nodded reluctantly. Go in, I want to see where I studied. Silly girl. Lu Yu hugged her. This school was completely renovated 10 years ago. The original classrooms are gone. Now there is only one teaching building. Even the playground has been completely renovated. The layout is completely different from our time. Even if you go in, you won't be able to find where we study. Liang Xuanzi's eyes turned slightly red, she sobbed softly, and fell silent again in Lu Yu's arms. Lu Yu patted her back gently and looked at the school in front of him. 10 years ago, when Lu Yu was a senior high school student, this school began to be demolished and rebuilt. He remembered that he cried for several days at that time, especially when those tile-roofed classrooms were demolished. He sat in the school and cried for a whole day. In the end, he was helped back by Lu Qinming. He still remembers it now. It was the first time in several years that he hugged Lu Qinming and cried and shouted. All his memories were gone. After so many years, he has gradually adapted to the disappearance of the school, so although he comes back every year, he will avoid this place every time he comes back. Because this place held so many of his childhood memories, but now there is not even a single person to be found here. At this moment, a sudden voice startled the two of them. Huh? Are you serious? Your husband. Liang Xuanzi stood up in a panic, but when she saw the person in front of her, she was stunned. Then she let go of Lu Yu, ran quickly to the person, and hugged him. Teacher Yu. Teacher Yu is a senior teacher at Maoqian Village Primary School. Although she only has a junior high school diploma, she was a formal class teacher when Lu Yu and his classmates were in primary school. And she happened to be the class teacher of Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi. 20 years have passed, and Teacher Yu now has a head full of white hair and many wrinkles on his face, but he still looks very energetic, and there is always a comfortable smile on his lips. Lu Yu didn't quite understand it before, but later he realized that smile was called relief. So, even after 20 years, Lu Yu would still go to see her every time he came back, year after year, without fail. Teacher Yu held Liang Xuanzi for a while before realizing something was wrong. Hey, come on, get up quickly. You're pregnant. Don't get excited. Talk slowly. Liang Xuanzi wiped her tears, then smiled and made a playful gesture. Teacher Yu, look who I am. Teacher Yu was stunned for a moment, first looked at Lu Yu, then turned his attention to Liang Xuanzi again, and looked at her carefully for a long time before suddenly slapping his forehead. You are the little girl whose braids were burned by Xiao Yu. Liang Xuanzi, is it you? Liang Xuanzi was so happy when Teacher Yu recognized her that she wanted to jump up, but was held down by Teacher Yu. Is it really you? Don't jump, be careful. Oh, I never thought that the guy who burned your braids would marry you. But you have grown up and become more beautiful, which is great. Teacher Yu, you are old. Liang Xuanzi was a little unhappy, especially when she saw the white hair on Teacher Yu's head and the wrinkles on his face. She couldn't help feeling sad. Chapter 7 Teacher-Student Relationship. Teacher Yu was very happy. How can I not age? I am already 65 years old this year. If I don't age, I will be a monster. You? Lu Yu walked over with a smile. The boy wanted to see the original school, but found that the school had been demolished and rebuilt. There is no place for memories of the past, and it is sad to be here. Teacher Yu laughed out loud when he heard this and tapped Lu Yu's forehead. You're still talking about Xiao Zi. When this school was demolished, who was the one who cried for a whole day in the school? Lu Yu touched his nose awkwardly, turned his head and looked at the sky in the distance. Whatever you say, it has nothing to do with me anyway. Phew, Xianzi couldn't help but laugh, then hugged Teacher Yu's shoulders. Teacher Yu hasn't retired yet. You should also take a rest. Teacher Yu patted Liang Xuanzi's back, full of emotion. I've retired, but I have nothing to do at home, so I came over here to look at the gate. Every day I see the children studying and going home from school, and my heart is full and comfortable. Let's go in and sit down. Okay. Liang Xuanzi agreed readily. Seeing Liang Xuanzi agreed, Teacher Yu smiled, took her hand and walked into the campus, while telling her some things that happened in the school over the years, such as which teacher went to junior high school and which teacher went to another elementary school. Finally, he told Liang Xuanzi that their math teacher at that time is now the principal of this school. Obviously, they were just some very ordinary little things, but Liang Xuanzi listened very carefully, and from time to time she talked about some things that happened in the past, which made Teacher Yu laugh. Lu Yu just sat at the door, watching the door for Teacher Yu while also feeling Liang Xuanzi's mood. It was not until the bell rang that Teacher Yu stopped and shouted to Lu Yu, Xiao Yu, go to the office and call your teacher Shui, and tell her that her favorite student from that year came to see her. Hey! Lu Yu stood up with a smile, made a heart shape with his hands towards Liang Xuanzi, and then walked out of the door while Liang Xuanzi looked shy. As for the favorite student, this is true. Although Liang Xuanzi only studied here for 1 year, she had always maintained full marks in mathematics since the first time, and was the mathematics teacher's favorite student. In addition, Liang Xuanzi was shy and introverted at that time, making her the mathematics teacher's favorite student. Therefore, Lu Yu, who liked to tease Liang Xuanzi back then, naturally became a negative example in the mathematics teacher's mind. Even though Lu Yu's grades improved dramatically later, his math teacher would still double his expectations of him. Once Lu Yu objected, he would rebut him with a sentence like, then please ask Liang Xuanzi to come back to me, leaving Lu Yu speechless. In the room, Liang Xuanzi panicked when she saw Lu Yu leaving the house. Principal's office. After Lu Yu arrived, he first looked through the window, and after making sure that there was someone inside, he knocked on the door gently. Hearing the word, come in, Lu Yu pushed the door open cautiously. There was no other way, mainly because the shadow left by Teacher Shui on Lu Yu was quite heavy. When he came in, Teacher Shui also raised her head. When she saw him, she laughed out loud. Wow, who do I think I am? Isn't this the college bully from back then? How come you have time to come and see me today? Compared with Teacher Yu, Teacher Shui is a lot younger, just 48 years old this year. But even so, there is a large patch of white hair on his head, and he looks nothing like a man in his 60s. However, it is precisely because of his presence that Maoqian Village Primary School has been able to improve year by year. He is a good teacher who truly cares about the children. In this era of rampant class groups, it was Teacher Shui who blocked this path and directly looked at all the teachers in the school. I don't care what happens in other schools, and I can't control it, but in this school, as long as you are still under my management, whoever dares to assign homework to parents, you'd better get out as soon as possible. He said so and did so. Lu Yu had heard from people in the village before that Teacher Shui still corrects homework in the school until 7 or 8 o'clock. Sometimes, if it is a test paper, he will even correct it until after 10 o'clock. Lu Yu smiled ingratiatingly. Well, Mr. Shui, it's not nice for you to say that. Why can't I come to see you? And I'm not here alone this time. I brought my wife with me. You have to give me some face. After all, I was your pride, right? Stop smiling at me and tell me what's going on. Teacher Shui scolded with a smile. Lu Yu cheerfully took out a pack of cigarettes and placed them on the desk. Don't refuse, this is my only pack, given to me by someone else. I don't smoke, I'm just offering this to you, Mr. Shui. Are you busy? I knew it. Let's go. Teacher Shui put the cigarette into his pocket and walked towards the door first. When he passed Lu Yu, he chuckled and said, Why do you think I would refuse your cigarette? Lu Yu. By the time he reacted, Teacher Shui had already left the office. Lu Yu hurriedly chased after him, "Hey, Teacher Shui, wait for me, I came to tell you that someone wants to see you, and is sitting with Teacher Yu now." A few minutes later, Teacher Shui was stunned when he saw Liang Xuanzi in front of him. After he came to his senses, he even thought he had seen it wrong, so he took off his glasses and wiped them several times. When he finally confirmed that the person in front of him was his beloved baby, he felt terrible. "No, girl, why did you marry this brat? Have you forgotten that he burned your braids? Why are you so confused? Hey tilde Teacher Shui, that's too much. As the old saying goes, it's better to destroy 10 temples than to ruin a marriage. Can't you just bear to see me do well?" Before Liang Xuanzi could say anything, Lu Yu was already unhappy. Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue at Lu Yu proudly, and then responded with a smile, "Teacher Shui, this is all fate, and now Yu is very nice to me. Look, I'm pregnant with 4 babies." Teacher Shui sighed, "I know, but I just feel uncomfortable. You had such good grades back then, but it was all ruined by this brat, tilde." At this point, Teacher Shui couldn't help but laugh again, "But seeing that you two have such a good relationship, I feel relieved. You little brat, remember this, don't ever hurt others in the future, or I'll show you how I'll deal with you." Lu Yu stood up straight and said, "Don't worry, you don't have to do anything. My mother will take care of me first." Puff tilde. As soon as these words were spoken, the 3 people in the room laughed. But Lu Yu had nothing to do after that, as the 3 of them just left him aside, chatting and laughing there, which made Lu Yu very jealous. The 3 of them kept talking until school was over in the afternoon. Teacher Shui had to go and watch the students leave the school, especially those from other villages, who would not be allowed to leave unless they had a family with them. Teacher Yu was helping out on the side. After all, she was old, and it was impossible for Teacher Shui to really give her such a heavy task. Not to mention that Teacher Shui was introduced to the profession by Teacher Yu, so she could be said to be Teacher Yu's mentor. In addition, we are all from the same village, so Teacher Shui takes great care of his teachers. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi also chose to leave, and promised to pay New Year's greetings to the 2 of them during the Chinese New Year, and only then were they allowed to leave. On their way home, Liang Xuanzi was in a good mood, holding Lu Yu's arm tightly, humming the melody of "Let's Row the Boat," which was the first song Liang Xuanzi learned in this school. However, it seems that this song has disappeared from the textbooks and campus. Lu Yu gently swung along Liang Xuanzi's arm. "Are you happy?" Liang Xuanzi nodded and smiled with narrowed eyes. "I'm so happy to see Teacher Yu and Teacher Shui. I really didn't expect that they are still in the school. It's just that they are all old." Lu Yu chuckled, "That's for sure. You're going to be a mother, so how can they not age? But I think they must be very happy to see you today. Hee, husband, can you sing this song? Can you sing with me?" Lu Yu. Singing? In the street? Looking at the villagers coming and going, Lu Yu's old face felt a little hot. But looking at Liang Xuanzi's expectant eyes, Lu Yu still chose to compromise, and his mouth twitched slightly. "Okay, then you take the lead." Chapter 8, Children's Words. Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up. "Okay, let's row the oars, get ready, sing." Lu Yu closed his eyes and spoke, "Let's row the oars and push the boat away." When they got home, Lu Qinming and Wang Yun had already returned. Looking at the young couple who came in humming a song, Lu Qinming and the other man looked at each other in surprise, but then smiled at each other. No matter what, as long as the 2 of them were happy, it was okay. As for what they were going to do, was that important? But they didn't ask. Liang Xuanzi couldn't help but want to share. After seeing the 2 of them, she couldn't wait to run to Wang Yun's side and hugged her arms. "Mom, I went to school today and saw Teacher Yu and Teacher Shui. We talked about many things in the past. Mom, let me tell you." The mother and daughter went into their house, leaving Lu Yu and Lu Qinming staring at each other, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Ding! Their host is detected to be doting on the target person. The target person's happiness value is greatly improved, and financial skills are mastered. Lu Yu chuckled, walked over and sat down next to Lu Qinming, enjoying the tranquility and warmth of the moment. The next day, Lu Yu took Liang Xuanzi back to Chaoguang town and stayed at his father-in-law's house for a morning. After that, the 2 began to book tickets back to Haicheng. The main task of this return is to get the marriage certificate with Liang Xuanzi. Now that things have been coordinated, there is no need to stay any longer. The most important thing is that Li Meng's wedding is on the 5th, and today is already the 3rd, starting from tomorrow, many things have to be prepared. As one of Li Meng's few brothers in Haicheng, it would be unreasonable for Lu Yu not to be present. When they got home, Wang Yun had already packed her things. After they came back, she went straight to their high-speed rail station. 6 o'clock in the evening, Huahengting Yuan. Liang Xuanzi lay on the sofa in a relaxed manner and stretched herself. It's so comfortable to be back home, husband, hug. Lu Yu hung up the clothes with a smile, then walked over to her side and sat down, holding her in his arms and touching her forehead. Are you so unwilling to stay in your hometown? Liang Xuanzi turned her head away. No, my husband, don't accuse me falsely. Lu Yu was so adorable that he couldn't help but kiss her on the mouth, then put her down. Okay, I'll go prepare dinner, and then we'll go out for a walk. Okay, husband, thank you for your hard work. Liang Xuanzi turned sideways and smiled charmingly. After returning to Haicheng, Lu Qinming and Wang Yun returned to the old house. This was an agreement between Lu Qinming and Lu Yu. Wang Yun would go over to help take care of the house during the day, and give the couple some space for their own world at night. Just as Lu Yu was preparing dinner, his cell phone on the table rang. Liang Xuanzi took a curious look at it, then ran into the kitchen with the phone, answered the call and put it to Lu Yu's ear. Lu Yu was slightly stunned. The next moment, Li Meng's voice came from the phone. Lu Zi, help. Fetal cough cough, no, what are you doing? You're getting married soon, why are you in such a hurry to save her? Lu Yu was almost choked by the smoke and retorted in annoyance. Li Meng was stunned. What are you doing? Nonsense, what can you do at this time? I'm cooking. If you have something to say, just tell me now. Then. Li Meng laughed flatteringly. Can you help me the day after tomorrow and be a best man? Lu Yu was so angry that he laughed. Didn't you say you didn't need me? There's nothing we can do about it. Just tell me whether you'll come or not. I'm only going to get married once in my life, so don't embarrass me. Li Meng was anxious. Got it. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm cooking. Okay, that's it, I won't bother you two anymore. What did you say? Tomorrow? You guys are back. Wow, his reaction time is really amazing. After hanging up the phone, Lu Yu noticed a small white hand reaching into the plate stealthily. Sensing Lu Yu's gaze, Liang Xuanzi froze in place, and smiled guiltily. Well, my husband's cooking smells so good, the baby is getting hungry just by smelling it. Lu Yu took a breath and pointed at his face. Liang Xuanzi happily came over and gave him a kiss. Hey, hubby is not angry. Why should I be angry? Okay, you take it out and eat it first. I'll cook 2 more dishes. Lu Yu put the plate in Liang Xuanzi's hand with satisfaction and pinched her face with a smile. Liang Xuanzi shrugged her nose and put the plate back. No, I want to wait for my husband to eat together. I'm going out, otherwise I really can't help it. Having said that, she ran out, without any behavior that a pregnant woman should have, which made Lu Yu very nervous. It was not until she sat back on the sofa and took out her phone that Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief. He shook his head with a smile and murmured, I gave her nearly 20 points of physical fitness. There shouldn't be any problem, right? There shouldn't be any problem. I heard from Wang Yun that when she was pregnant, she was 8 months pregnant and she was still working in the fields. It's only been more than 4 months now. Yeah, there's no problem. Lu Yu let out a breath and continued cooking. 10 minutes later, he brought out for dishes and a soup, and then served Liang Xuanzi the meal. Looking at Liang Xuanzi's happy expression, Lu Yu opened his mouth to speak several times. After dinner, Lu Yu saw Liang Xuanzi running around and rummaging through clothes again. He couldn't help it anymore and went over to hug her waist gently. Slow down next time, are you trying to scare me to death? Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment, looking at Lu Yu with confusion, then looked at her belly, immediately shrugged her nose, and pouted aggrievedly. Husband. I don't want to get pregnant. Poof! Lu Yu almost vomited blood. But what can he do? Holding Liang Xuanzi in his arms, he comforted her softly. All right, husband, promise, we'll just have this one baby, okay? Be good and listen to me. Liang Xuanzi hummed and nestled in Lu Yu's arms. Husband, Bao is wronged. Yes, husband knows. Come, husband will help you find clothes. After finally comforting Liang Xuanzi, Lu Yu felt that he had been more tired than fighting a battle. However, after seeing the smile on Liang Xuanzi's face, all his hard work disappeared, leaving only a sense of accomplishment. After Liang Xuanzi changed her clothes, the two walked out of the house and took a stroll in the square below the villa. After all, it was already nearly 8:30 in the evening, and considering Liang Xuanzi's physical condition, it would not be appropriate for her to go out, so it would be nice for her to just walk around downstairs. Especially at this time, the square in the community is mostly filled with parents playing with their children. Looking at those lively and cute children, Liang Xuanzi's mood is obviously much better. She put her hands on her belly, and the corners of her mouth unconsciously revealed a loving smile that only belongs to a mother. Just as they reached the edge of the square, a small children's volleyball jumped in front of them, and soon after, a girl who looked about 4 or 5 years old ran over quickly. Lu Yu was just about to pick up the volleyball and return it to the child, but to their surprise, the child actually ran directly to Liang Xuanzi and looked at her with shining eyes. "Auntie is so beautiful, much prettier than my mother." "Hey! Why isn't my mother a beautiful mother?" Hearing these words, Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi were both stunned, and so was the woman following the little girl. It was obvious that she was the little girl's mother. It was also obvious that the little girl's fate might be tragic. Thinking of this, Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi looked at the little girl's expression and couldn't help but sympathize with her. Behind the girl, her mother's face was filled with embarrassment. She was afraid that her daughter would say something shocking again, so she ran over and hugged the girl in her arms. She raised her hand and slapped her butt in annoyance. "You stupid girl, wait and see how I'll deal with you when I get back." After saying that, the woman bowed slightly towards Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi, full of apology. "I'm sorry, the child is immature, then. I won't bother you anymore, I'm really sorry." Fetal seeing the woman carrying the child away, Liang Xuanzi couldn't help but laughed with her hands covering her mouth. "Actually, that sister is also very beautiful, right? Is this the legendary saying that in the eyes of girls, their mothers are ugly?" Chapter 9, Man's Nature. Lu Yu was slightly stunned, then he put his arm around Liang Xuanzi's shoulders and said, "What are you talking about? Our daughter will definitely not say that in the future." Liang Xuanzi made a face and raised her little head proudly, with an expression of "hurry up and praise me for my beauty" on her face. In fact, except for the older ones, there are basically no ugly women in this community. After all, those who can buy a house in Huahengting Yuan are considered upper middle class people even in Haicheng. After all, not everyone can afford a house that costs tens of millions. And for these people, no matter their own daughters or their wives, it is very unlikely that there will be ugly ones. Don't even mention marrying a virtuous wife. Everyone knows this truth, but once the conditions are met, who doesn't want to marry a beautiful one? Lu Yu pinched Liang Xuanzi's face and pulled it to both sides with amusement. Just as he was about to speak, a child who looked no more than 1 year old came staggering over, hugged Liang Xuanzi's legs, raised his bald little head, and looked at Liang Xuanzi and giggled. Seeing this scene, Lu Yu was so angry that he laughed. Well, such a big brat actually wanted to come and steal his wife. At this moment, a girl in her 20s ran over, picked up the child, pinched his little face full of collagen, and said through gritted teeth, "Okay, you little thing, I just blinked and you came over to tease me, right? Who did you learn this bad habit from?" The child didn't understand what his aunt said at all. He just looked at Liang Xuanzi and smiled. He even stretched out his chubby little hands and asked for a hug. The girl quickly pressed the child's hand down, and bowed to Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi to apologize with a smile. I'm sorry, the child is too naughty, I hope you don't mind, I'm really sorry." Liang Xuanzi chuckled and said, "It's okay. Besides, this little guy is really cute. Is this your sister's child?" The girl hummed, "Yes, it's my sister's. I'm a graduate student at Haicheng University and I'm temporarily living in my sister's house." Graduate student? Really? Liang Xuanzi's eyes flashed with envy. At that time, she was also able to take the postgraduate entrance examination, but some things happened later, which forced her to withdraw from the postgraduate examination. This was her own secret, and even Xu Wenwen didn't know it. After the girl apologized to the two of them again, she finally ran away before the little one could no longer hold back her tears, but soon, Liang Xuanzi and Lu Yu heard the loud cry. Liang Xuanzi couldn't help laughing again and patted Lu Yu's arm gently. "Husband, do you men really like beautiful girls since childhood?" Lu Yu was stunned. "Huh? What are you talking about? At least I'm not that kind of person, otherwise I would burn your braids." Liang Xuanzi's face flushed. "What are you talking about? Teacher Shui told me that you burned my braids because you thought I was pretty. Yeah? Didn't I tell you?" Lu Yu said happily, tapping her nose. Liang Xuanzi. If you think about it carefully, it seems to be true. However, what Lu Yu said at that time was that such a beautiful girl would cry for a long time if she was punched, right? Thinking of this, Liang Xuanzi got angry, let go of Lu Yu's hand, and walked forward angrily. Seeing this scene, several big question marks popped up on Lu Yu's head. Fortunately, he still remembered Liang Xuanzi's physical condition. After a brief moment of confusion, he reacted quickly and chased after her. He reached out and took Liang Xuanzi into his arms. Okay, I was young and ignorant at that time, and besides, do you think I have been a LSP since I was a child? Liang Xuanzi pouted, baby doesn't care. Anyway, baby is angry. The best, 3 kisses will make it better. Okay, not to mention 30 will be fine. Lu Yu carried her to the stool next to him and sat down, watching the square dance in the middle of the square, swaying gently. The two of them sat here until 9:30. When the weather turned cooler, Lu Yu stood up and pulled Liang Xuanzi, let's go. It's time to go back and rest. Liang Xuanzi's face was flushed. She tilted her head and leaned against Lu Yu's chest, following him step by step. When she got to the back, her entire weight was on Lu Yu. But with dozens of points of physical strength added, this little weight was nothing to Lu Yu. When he walked into the corridor, he simply picked up Liang Xuanzi horizontally and then walked into the elevator. The next day, Lu Yu opened his eyes refreshed, looked at Liang Xuanzi who was sleeping soundly beside him, smiled and kissed her forehead, then got dressed, went out to wash up, and prepare breakfast. While Lu Yu was busy preparing breakfast, Linjiang community was attacked. Li Mingzi had been tortured to the point of being unrecognizable. Not only did he have dark circles under his eyes, his hair was also messy, and his clothes were worn crookedly. But even so, he was still holding his mobile phone and making a call. Booking banquets, delivery of wedding dresses, reservation of wedding cars, and so on. Although both parents came from the countryside, weddings in the city are very different from those in the countryside, so parents can't help at all. Almost all the big and small things fell on Li Meng. A few minutes later, Li Meng hung up the phone, then heaved a sigh of relief and slumped down on the marriage bed with a helpless expression on his face. But just as he sat down, before he had time to catch his breath, the door was pushed open from the outside, and a thin but capable young man ran in and slapped Li Meng on the thigh. Hurry up and get up, it's time to go and see the wedding car. In the room, Li Meng stood up weakly, sighed shakily, and raised his hand to the young man in front of him. Boss, let me tell you, whoever gets married a second time in this life is a bastard. Bang! The young man who was called the boss slapped Li Meng on the back. What are you talking about? What's the matter? You don't like the squad leader? Do you want a second time? Do you believe that we brothers will beat you to death first? Hurry up, don't waste time here, the wedding car company has called twice. Li Meng laughed foolishly. Yeah, let's go. Oh, don't forget to call Lu Zi and ask him to come over quickly. This guy is now stuck in the land of gentleness and won't come out. Damn it. I know. The boss pushed Li Meng out. It was not until he got on stage that he took out his phone, found Lu Yu's number and dialed it. Huahan Courtyard. Lu Yu was having a sweet breakfast with Liang Xuanzi when the sudden ringing of the phone shattered the warmth between them. He took out his phone unhappily, but when he saw the incoming call, he was stunned for a moment, then quickly made a "huh" gesture to Liang Xuanzi, and then answered the call. Hello. Big brother, why did you think of calling me? Get lost, come quickly, Sana can't stand it anymore. Lu Yu was stunned. You are all here. I'm here. Now there are 6 people and only you are missing. Are you free? If you are, go to Yuanding Sanxing Wedding Company now. I'm taking Saner to look at the wedding car now. Okay, I'll be there right away. Lu Yu agreed, hung up the phone, stuffed something into his mouth, and hurriedly grabbed his coat. Then he ran to Liang Xuanzi and gave her a kiss on the face. Wife, I'm going to look at the wedding car with Sana first. You wait for mom at home, dear. There was a hint of reluctance in Liang Xuanzi's eyes, but she did not refuse. After all, she heard all the phone calls just now. It was really not appropriate to take her with Lu Yu and his brothers to the reunion. So she pointed to the other side of her face and pouted. Okay, but you have to give me 2 kisses, and you are not allowed to drink too much outside. Lu Yu smiled and kissed him, shaking the car keys in his hand. Driving, why drink? Let's go, I will be back early. Goodbye, husband. Liang Xuanzi sent Lu Yu out of the room before returning to the dining table in a depressed mood. However, without Lu Yu by her side, she suddenly felt that all the delicious food lost its flavor. After reluctantly eating a few bites, she put down her chopsticks, propped her chin with both hands, and glanced at the electronic clock on the wall. It's been 5 minutes since my husband left. I miss him so much. Chapter 10 Unintentional Show of Wealth. At this moment, the door was pushed open, and Wang Yun walked in with the food needed for lunch, wondering, girl, why did that brat run out in a panic just now? Who happened to whom? Liang Xuan's eyes lit up, and she stood up quickly, running over to take the things in Wang Yun's hand. Mom, it's okay, Li Meng is getting married tomorrow, and several of his roommates from the university dormitory are here, so we're going over to get together. Is that so? Have you told him? Never mind, I'll just call myself. At the same time, Lu Yu had already driven out of the community and headed straight to their wedding company. Fortunately, it was still relatively early, and Wahangting Yuan was not far from the wedding company, so when Lu Yu arrived, he happened to meet Li Meng and the others. Looking at the young man standing next to Li Meng, Lu Yu was silent for a moment, then smiled, walked over quickly, and punched the other person in the heart. Tong Junlin, you still have the nerve to show up. It's been 5 years, what's wrong? If it wasn't Sana's wedding this time, you still didn't plan to show up. Tong Junlin, the leader of Lu Yu's dormitory, is from Jianghan, northeast China. He is generous and righteous. Although his family has no assets, he is the undisputed number one in the dormitory. Everyone respects him because he is the one who gets things done. But after graduating from university, Tong Junlin left Haicheng. We still kept in touch at first, but later he seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. He didn't answer the phone, and when I went to look for him, I was told that he had moved. Originally thought that they would never have the chance to meet again in this life, but unexpectedly he would be blown out this time. This was why Lu Yu rushed over in such a hurry. After all, when they were in school, Tong Junlin carried a lot of weight for him. Tong Junlin hugged Lu Yu and patted his back. Let's talk about our business later, let's help Sana look for the wedding car first. While speaking, Tong Junlin glanced at Lu Yu's Hongqi HS9 and looked at him as if he was showing off. The wedding company had already confirmed it last week, and we are here now just to make the final confirmation and choose the decoration for the wedding car. Because of Lu Yu's help, Li Meng now has some money in his hands, so he is a lot more generous. He actually chose a Porsche for his wedding car, which costs 8,000 yuan a day to rent. Together with the entire wedding car team, the daily cost is a full 30,000 yuan. You know, in Lu Yu's case, the wedding cars are basically cars from relatives and friends. At most, they ask the wedding company to provide an Audi or Mercedes-Benz, which only costs a few hundred yuan a day, or 30,000 yuan. It can be seen how much money Li Meng spent. After choosing the decorations and finalizing the wedding car lineup, Li Meng paid the wedding company another 10,000 yuan. The remaining 10,000 yuan will be settled after the wedding tomorrow. By the time they walked out of the wedding company, it was already 9:30 in the morning. Li Meng patted his forehead gently. Good boy, finally everything is done, boss, is everything okay from now on? Tong Junlin put his arm around his neck. Nothing? How is that possible? The 6 of us haven't been together for a few years. Shouldn't we have a good drink this time? Li Meng's mouth twitched slightly. Fuck, is tomorrow okay? I just want to sleep right now. Okay, let's get together, forget about drinking, I really can't stand it now, I'm afraid I'll die suddenly if I drink. Tong Junlin nodded happily. Since you are so pitiful, let's arrange it this way. Youngest brother, what do you say? Lu Yu waved his phone and said, anything is fine. I just booked a table. How is Shu's restaurant? Tong Junlin was about to nod when he suddenly realized what was happening and looked at Lu Yu in amazement. Fuck, youngest brother, you got rich. The taste of Shu's family. This is a traditional restaurant that has been around since the 1920s. It is rumored that the first chef was a court chef in the late Qing dynasty who was a master in cooking Chinese cuisine. However, this century-old store began a large-scale renovation in the new century. Except for the taste, everything else including the service and environment has been completely remodeled. The most important thing is that the price is said to have increased dozens of times compared to the last century. Of course, these are just rumors, but Lu Yu and his friends did go to Shu's taste once. But right after they walked in, before they had time to order, they were scared away by the prices. From that time on, the taste of the Shu family became the biggest obsession of the brothers during their college years and had permeated into every aspect of their lives. Therefore, after hearing that Lu Yu had reserved a table at Shu's taste, Tong Junlin had such a big reaction. After all, a casual meal there would cost tens of thousands of yuan, which was really beyond his expectations. As the only insider, Li Meng directly pushed Tong Junlin back and said, "Don't worry, the youngest is very rich now. Do you know where he lives? Huahan Courtyard, a house costs tens of millions, paid in full. I was able to get married smoothly this time, and it was the youngest who helped pay 300,000, so you can eat without worry today. Let's try the feeling of eating at a wealthy house." Tong Junlin's pupils shrank unconsciously. Although it was hidden, Lu Yu still caught it. He couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, the boss has something hidden in his heart. Patting Tong Junlin's shoulder gently, Lu Yu chuckled, "Let's go, and by the way, tell me where you have been all these years. Do you not consider us brothers anymore?" Tong Junlin took a deep breath, exhaled heavily, smiled and nodded. "Okay, I'll call them now." When they were in the city, there were 6 people in Lu Yu's dormitory. Lu Yu was the youngest, Tong Junlin was the oldest, Li Meng was the third, and there were also Ju Yu, the second oldest, Peng Liang, the fourth oldest, and Zhang He, the fifth oldest. Not only do they live in the same dormitory, but also in the same department and the same class, so their relationship is even deeper than that of ordinary roommates. This time, Li Meng is the first of the 6 brothers to get married, and his marriage partner is the class monitor Hu Yunyun, so they have to come. I guess this is why Tong Junlin was blown out. Half an hour later. At the Haicheng University food court, Lu Yu also met Ju Yu and his friends who were from different places. He gave each of them a big bear hug and slapped each other on the back a few times, which finally let out the worry in his heart. After their hug, Ju Yu was the first to punch Lu Yu on the shoulder. "That's great, youngest brother. Among the 6 brothers, you are the most promising one now, right? I heard that you have a younger sister-in-law? And you are pregnant." Lu Yu smiled and nodded. "After Sana's matter is over, I will bring her to see you." "Don't." Zhang He raised his hand and pressed Lu Yu's shoulder. "Brothers, we have nothing to do this afternoon. I heard that you moved into Huahingting Yuan, a mansion worth tens of millions. It's okay to let the brothers go over to take a look at the house and get to know the place, right?" Slightly stunned, Lu Yu turned and looked at Li Meng. After seeing Li Meng nod, he smiled again. "Okay, as long as it doesn't delay Sana's business, then after dinner, I'll invite you to come over, but let me make it clear first, no drinking at lunch. If you want to drink, we can drink as much as we want at Sana's wedding tomorrow." The 6 brothers walked into Shu's flavor talking and laughing, and then, under the astonished gazes of Tong Junlin and the other 4, Lu Yu directly called a waiter and led them to the luxury private room on the 3rd floor. It was not until they sat down in the private room that they suddenly realized what was going on. Tong Junlin approached Lu Yu the first time and whispered, "Youngest, you're not going to come? I heard that the minimum consumption for this private room is 30,000 yuan, and we are not outsiders. Can you report back like this?" Peng Liang also frowned and said, "That's right. It's the same wherever we get together. It's nothing more than eating and drinking. Don't worry about face. If you quarrel with your sister-in-law because of this, then we'd better get out as soon as possible." Ju Yu patted Lu Yu on the shoulder and said, "Youngest brother, as the saying goes, if you wish to win the heart of one person, you will be together till old age. Since your sister-in-law is willing to give birth to your child, it means she is determined to spend the rest of her life with you. We can't do anything reckless just to show off." Lu Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he slapped a few people's hands away. "What are you talking about? Don't worry, don't you know who I am? Am I the kind of person who neglects his family for the sake of face? Hurry up and sit down. Order whatever you want. Today is our first gathering in 5 years, and you are not allowed to save any food." Tong Junlin was still a little worried, and asked with a worried look on his face, "Are you really okay? How about you call your sister-in-law first? Let's ask, otherwise we won't dare to eat this meal." Chapter 11 Story. Even Li Meng came over to join in the fun. "That's right, son, take it easy and tell your sister-in-law." Although Lu Yu was choked by them, he felt warm in his heart. After all, their starting point was good, which was to make their brother live a good life. With a slightly helpless look, he took out his cell phone, found Liang Xuanzi's number and dialed it. Liang Xuanzi seemed to have been waiting for his call, so she answered the phone as soon as it rang. Then Liang Xuanzi's happy voice came, "Hubby, do you miss me?" Tong Junlin and the others were choked by these words that were so sweet. After hearing from Li Meng that Lu Yu's wife Liang Xuanzi was also a super beauty, several people fell completely silent. Lu Yu couldn't help coughing twice. "Ahem, be good, don't make trouble. I'm with a few brothers at Shu's Wei Dao, they are worried that I'm spending money recklessly, so they have to call you to report it. Come and tell them, your husband, do you need this little money?" R. Hearing that Lu Yu's brothers were all there, Liang Xuanzi screamed in shame and said angrily, "Bad husband, why didn't you tell me earlier? Someone is dead. You have to compensate me when you come back, or I will complain to my mother." Okay, but can you please tell me first if we can have dinner here? I estimate it will cost tens of thousands of dollars. Liang Xuanzi was slightly stunned and instinctively wanted to refute, but then she thought of Lu Yu's current worth, and suddenly felt relieved. She said shyly, "That's it? I thought it was much more. Humph tilde eat it, and don't forget to bring me some." Okay. Lu Yu hung up the phone with a smile. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Tong Junlin and the other 5 looking at him like a ghost, which made him tremble in his heart. In the private room, the corners of Lu Yu's mouth twitched unconsciously, and his scalp was numb. "No, brothers, do you still want to eat? Fuck. Youngest brother, are you really rich?" Peng Liang was the first to react. He suddenly grabbed Lu Yu's shoulders and looked him up and down, as if he wanted to see what was different about this little brother who had been taken care of in school back then and who was different from them. Ju Yu breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled, "Okay, since my sister-in-law said it's okay, let's sit down. But let's make it clear first, when we get to the youngest brother's place later, the brothers should know what to do, so I won't say much." "That's right, sit down, don't let the youngest think that we look down on him." Tong Junlin also came back to his senses and asked several brothers to sit down, but after thinking for a while, he still looked at Lu Yu and said, "This place is only for this time, it will not happen again. For regular gatherings, I think the roadside barbecue stall is quite good." Lu Yu sighed, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Okay, I'll listen to you, but it's lunchtime today, we should eat. Waiter, give me the menu and let them order." Even though Lu Yu repeatedly told them to order whatever they wanted, Tong Junlin and the others finally chose the cheapest dish each. In the end, Lu Yu added a few pretty good dishes. It can only be said that he appreciated the kindness, but it didn't mean he had to listen to them. If he wasn't afraid that these people wouldn't be able to accept it, he really wanted to explain his wealth to them and let them know what it meant to spill wine. After the waiter left, Lu Yu finally set his sights on Tong Junlin. "Boss, tell me, what happened in these years? The phone call is not working, and there is no trace of the person." Tong Junlin was slightly stunned and couldn't help but frown. But before he could say anything, Lu Yu raised his hand and continued, "If you regard us as brothers, then tell us the truth. What can't we brothers shoulder together? Have you forgotten the oath we made in school? Of course, if you don't regard us as brothers, then just ignore what I said. After this meal, we will do what we should do in the future." "That's right, boss. I'm not saying anything, but I felt something was wrong when you came here yesterday. But considering that you have your own ideas, I have been holding back and not asking. Now that the youngest one has brought it up, let's talk about it. What's going on?" Peng Liang leaned against Tong Junlin, his face looking as if he was going to beat you up if you did something wrong. Tong Junlin clenched his fist subconsciously. After several seconds, he looked up and sighed, "Well, it's not something shameful. You know, I come from a single-parent family and have lived with my father since I was young. The year I graduated, my father was diagnosed with pulmonary edema and sepsis. After draining out all his savings, he could barely control the disease, but it is basically impossible to cure it." At this point, Tong Junlin's eyes became red, and he gritted his teeth to hold back tears. "Later, I heard that there was a way to treat my father in Shanghai, so I sold my old house and went to Shanghai for medical treatment. After I arrived, I found out that it would cost more than 1 million to cure him. My old house is in the suburbs, and I only sold it for more than 600,000. In order to raise the cost of my father's treatment, these years, forget it, I won't say more." Bang! Li Meng punched Tong Junlin in the face, then raised his hand and grabbed his collar. "You bastard, why the hell did you not tell us about such an important matter? Do you consider us brothers? You are bastard." Lu Yu stood up and pushed Li Meng down, then looked at Tong Junlin. "What about now? How is uncle?" Tong Junlin leaned against the back of the chair to prevent his tears from falling. A relieved, relaxed, sad, and helpless smile appeared on his face. He's gone. He passed away last winter. I took him back to my hometown. I've been busy paying off my debts during this period. I'm sorry. I made everyone feel uncomfortable on these 3 happy days. It's my fault. Really. Get lost. Before Tong Junlin could finish, Lu Yu slapped him, stared into his eyes, and then patted his shoulder heavily. How much do you still owe? A few 100,000, maybe. I have a good job there now, earning 15,000 a month, which should pay off in 3 to 5 years. Let's not talk about that. If you still recognize me as your boss, then listen to me. These 2 days are Sana's big wedding day, and if you keep doing this, I'll really be angry. This sentence directly blocked Lu Yu and his team's thinking. The most important thing is that Tong Junlin's father is gone. As for the matter of paying back the money, they didn't say anything. Tong Junlin has to do it himself. Because they have paid the money now, it will definitely be more difficult for Tong Junlin given his temperament. At the same time, he has to endure the inner torment and feel that he has let down his brothers. In this way, it will be even more difficult for him to see this boss again in the future. The originally happy gathering suddenly became a little dull because of Tong Junlin's incident. After a long while, Lu Yu let out a long breath and returned to his seat. Boss, I remember that you have good financial ability. At the beginning, you said you wanted to take the accounting certificate exam. Did you pass it? I came down. I took the exam after I finished taking care of my dad's things. What's wrong? Tong Junlin was a little confused and looked at Lu Yu in confusion. Lu Yu waved his hand. Nothing, I just need a financial officer. Do you want to come and help me? Help me keep an eye on my purse. You started a company. Tong Junlin was stunned, then suddenly realized, yes, if you start a company, you are unlikely to have restricted assets. Okay, as long as you say the word, I will come over. Anyway, I am just a temporary worker there, so it doesn't matter when I quit. Okay, then starting today, you will be my chief financial officer. But first, I'll be quite busy here, and you'll have to learn foreign languages on your own. Most importantly, you'll have to travel back and forth between China and abroad. For the monthly salary, I'll set it at 50,000 for now, and there will be dividends every quarter. At this point, Lu Yu also looked at Ju Yu and the others. You guys too, if you want to come and follow me. Goodbye. Before Lu Yu could finish, he was interrupted by Zhang He. Among the few of us, you are the youngest and a top student, and the eldest is also a top student. There are only 4 of us. If you hadn't let us in school, I think it would have been difficult for us to graduate. That's right. We know our own abilities, and it's not like we can't get through now. If there are any difficulties, we will come to you again. Okay, let's stop talking about this. Let's eat. Today is a party. Let's all be happy. Chapter 12, Trouble 1. Fuck, this is the legendary high-end residential area? The environment, the management, the things, well, I admit that I envy it. It's really good. Whether it's greenery, parking spaces, or other supporting facilities, it's much better than those low and medium-end residential areas. I envy it. Youngest, can you please share your experience with me? How did you suddenly explode? In the Huahinting Yuan community, Tong Junlin and the other 3 people looked at the surrounding environment in amazement, clicking their tongues, unable to hide the envy in their eyes. Lu Yu smiled and parked the car in the underground garage. Li Meng originally planned to park in the temporary parking space, but when he saw that 3 consecutive parking spaces were all in Lu Yu's name, he felt bad. Fuck, Lu Zi, you actually bought 3 parking spaces. Are you really a rich man? The other people had similar expressions. After all, buying a house and buying a parking space are 2 different things. Many people work hard their entire lives, but only end up with a house, while a parking space is always temporary. Ju Yu and his friends still live in their hometown in the countryside and drive to and from get off work every day, but this does not mean that they do not want to move to the city. It is mainly because their financial situation does not allow it. Lu Yu parked the car and chuckled. No, this is a free parking space. Although I know that what Lu Yu said is true, why the hell do I want to beat him up so much? Because Lu Yu had called Liang Xuanzi before coming, so when they walked out of the elevator, they saw Liang Xuanzi standing at the door with her eyes fixed on the elevator. Seeing Lu Yu, Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up and she ran over quickly. But after running 2 steps, she remembered what Lu Yu said before, and hurriedly slowed down her pace, walked over with a smile on her face, and snorted a little guiltily, then looked at Tong Junlin and the other 5 and waved, "Hello, my name is Liang Xuanzi, and I'm Lu Yu's wife." Tong Junlin and the other 3 looked at Lu Yu in amazement. Their main reason was that Liang Xuanzi's appearance was so stunning that it even made them feel like they were looking at a 2-dimensional beauty, so they couldn't react for a while. It was not until Liang Xuanzi's voice was heard that they came back to their senses and hurriedly nodded to greet Liang Xuanzi. Liang Xuanzi chuckled and said, "Come in quickly." Tong Junlin shook his head and looked at Li Meng inexplicably. "Sana, is this what you call a little pretty?" Zhu Yu and the other 2 also looked at Li Meng with displeasure. "Damn, if she is just a little bit pretty, then are there still women in this world?" Li Meng's scalp tingled when they looked at him, and he said stiffly, "Isn't Yun Yun right next to me? What do you want me to say?" "Hurry up, the person has disappeared." "TSK. I'll settle the score with you when I get back." Zhang He rolled his eyes, then quickly turned around and caught up with Lu Yu. After entering the living room, Liang Xuanzi greeted a few people again and went back to the bedroom to find Wang Yun. These brothers of Lu Yu came a little suddenly. Except for Li Meng, she met the others for the first time. She really didn't know what to say. And she could see that if she was there, those people would not be able to relax. Instead of that, it would be better to leave the space to them brothers. As expected, after Liang Xuanzi entered the bedroom, Tong Junlin and the other 5 people, including Li Meng, all breathed a sigh of relief. Zhu Yu even hit Lu Yu and looked at him seriously. "Your wife is so beautiful and is willing to give birth to a child for you. Did you save the Milky Way in your previous life?" After a pause, he continued, "Be nice to her. You can see that she is a good girl." Lu Yu chuckled and nodded, "Don't worry, I care much more about it than you do, and she and I have been classmates from elementary school to high school. We are childhood sweethearts." Lu Yu's words directly blocked everything that Tong Junlin and the others wanted to say. After all, since they were childhood sweethearts, the 2 families must be very familiar with each other and know each other well. Not to mention anything else, just when it comes to the feelings between the 2 families, Lu Yu will not act recklessly. Combined with their understanding of Lu Yu, everyone relaxed completely and began to visit Lu Yu's home. It must be said that the design of the large flat in Huahan Courtyard is really impressive. The 5 people, no longer burdened by their thoughts, have already started discussing, "Fuck, I didn't dare to look at it just now, but now I realize that this hall is really fucking big. Wow, it's so comfortable. And this balcony. In the summer, I can sit here and drink wine while enjoying the breeze. Damn, I envy you just thinking about it. This big kitchen is almost as big as my apartment. It's too extravagant and too corrupt. Lu Zi, is it too late to curry favor with him now?" Lu Yu took them around the house and listened to their flattery. Although he was not very vain, at this moment, Lu Yu discovered that it was really nice to have one's vanity satisfied. Several people sat here with Lu Yu until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Because they had to prepare for tomorrow's wedding, Li Meng and the others left first. However, Lu Yu kept Tong Junlin to explain to him about his own business and some things that Tong Junlin would be responsible for next. Originally, Tong Junlin thought that Lu Yu was just a successful entrepreneur and had a small company, but when Lu Yu finished talking about his industry, Tong Junlin almost collapsed. Looking at Tong Junlin's expression of doubt about life, Lu Yu sighed and didn't say much. After all, these were all he had to go through, otherwise, his achievements would be just so-so. There wouldn't be much Lu Yu could help him with, not that he didn't want to, but that he couldn't. After all, although those industries belong to him, they are related to the jobs of countless people. He cannot destroy the operation of the entire industry because of Tong Junlin alone. It took Tong Jundorn more than half an hour to digest the information shock brought by Lu Yu. He looked at Lu Yu with a complicated expression. "Youngest, are you sure you are not kidding me?" Lu Yu leaned against the sofa, chuckled and shook his head. Tong Junlin took a deep breath and nodded. "What do you want me to do?" Lu Yu sat up straight and put his hand on his shoulder. "Just check the accounts, start with Jingting Building, do you have confidence?" Tong Junlin's eyes flickered. "Since you, the youngest brother, have given me this opportunity, wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if I don't make some achievements? Don't worry, I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer in a week at most." Tong Junlin is gone. Unlike the sad look on his face when he came, his eyes were shining when he left, showing his expectation for the future. Lu Yu sent Tong Junlin out of the community before returning home. In the living room, Liang Xuanzi was fiddling with her mobile phone, with her long legs casually draped over the coffee table, swaying slightly. Seeing Lu Yu coming back, she quickly threw her phone aside, threw herself into his arms, and looked at him aggrievedly. "Hubby, I miss you so much." Lu Yu kissed her on the face, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Didn't I come back early?" Liang Xuanzi snorted and turned her head away proudly. "You came back, but you didn't accompany me. It's the same as not coming back." "I don't care. At least 3 kisses, and a hug and a lift up high are required." "Har har har, okay, kiss, hug and lift you up." Lu Yu was so happy that he kissed Liang Xuanzi on the face several times, then picked her up, lifted her up and put her down gently. He did this several times, which made Liang Xuanzi giggle and was very happy. In the kitchen, Wen Yun looked at them with a smile on her face and couldn't help but sigh, "That's great." But just when Liang Xuanzi was enjoying her husband's doting, her phone rang at an inopportune time. Listening to the ringing of the phone, Liang Xuanzi simply buried her little head in Lu Yu's arms and muttered angrily, "Who is this? You have no sense of public morality. Don't you know that she is cultivating her relationship with her husband now? I'm so angry that I don't want to answer it." Lu Yu rubbed her face, picked her up with amusement, went back to the sofa and took her phone in his hand. He glanced at the caller ID and said softly, "It's Wenwen's call. Maybe there's something wrong. Pick it up." Liang Xuanzi groaned and got out of Lu Yu's arms. She answered the phone reluctantly, but before she could say anything, Xu Wenwen's anxious voice came from the phone. "Sister, come to Shanghai Hotel to save me, I'm on the 18th floor." Chapter 13, Trouble 2. After saying that, Xu Wenwen didn't even give Liang Xuanzi a chance to speak and directly hung up the phone. "Liang Xuanzi?" Suddenly, she thought of what Xu Wenwen had said to her before, and hurriedly stood up from Lu Yu's legs. "Husband, Wenwen is in danger, let's go quickly." Lu Yu also realized that something was wrong, and quickly stood up and put a coat on Liang Xuanzi. "What's going on?" Liang Xuanzi pushed Lu Yu out of the door with a worried look on her face. "Yao Wen told me last night that a guild wanted to sign her up, and the location was at Shanghai Hotel. And this signing opportunity, Yao Wen has been waiting for half a year, but why is it like this?" Lu Yu suddenly realized that he was obviously being scammed. Either there was something wrong with the guild, or there were scammers using the guild's reputation to do shady things. To be on the safe side, after driving out of the community, Lu Yu called Yu Haohan directly and asked him to send a lawyer to Shanghai Hotel. If there is a problem with the guild, he will make the guild disappear completely. If it is a scammer, he will also let the other party know why the flowers are so red. Because he was worried that Xu Wen might get into trouble, Lu Yu drove a little faster on the road. Fortunately, it wasn't the evening rush hour yet, otherwise. 10 minutes later, Lu Yu parked the car at the gate of Shanghai Hotel, threw the car keys directly to the security guard who ran over, and took out 300 yuan and handed it over. "Brother, it's urgent, please stop the car for me, thank you." Seeing Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi hurriedly walking in, the security guard was stunned. He lowered his head to look at the parking fee in his hand, smiled bitterly and shook his head. "This young man. Forget it, let's wait until he comes back." However, what Lu Yu did not expect was that when they arrived at Shanghai Hotel, a young man came to greet them immediately and bowed to them, saying, "Mr. Lu, Mrs. Lu, hello, I am Wang Summing, the chief lawyer of Fanlong Group. I have already found out their location, room 4 on the 18th floor, but I called the door several times and the other party did not open it. I am now communicating with the manager of this hotel." Lu Yu's eyes flickered. "Are you sure it's a guest room, not a conference room or something?" Wang Summing shook his head. "It can be confirmed that it is a guest room." Lu Yu took a deep breath. At this moment, he really had the urge to slap Xu Wenwen. She was such a grown-up, but she couldn't even tell this. What was she doing live streaming? No, with her brain, I guess she would be badly cheated even at work. After a moment's silence, Lu Yu looked at Wang Summing. "What did the manager say?" Wang Summing frowned and said, "The manager said they don't have the right to open the room." Lu Yu almost choked to death, gritted his teeth and said, "Go tell the manager to take the key to open the door. I will take responsibility if anything goes wrong, but if he doesn't open the door and something irreversible happens, I will make sure his hotel can't continue to operate." This was exactly what Wang Summing was waiting for. As soon as Lu Yu finished speaking, he walked over quickly and got the key in less than 30 seconds. The three of them then hurried upstairs. On the 18th floor, Wang Summing walked to room number 4 with ease and opened the door. The moment the door opened, a scream came out, "Stop, you bastard!" Hearing the voice, Lu Yu quickly let go of Liang Xuanzi and rushed into the guest room. The next moment, his anger began to soar. He stomped his toes on the ground and rushed towards the two men in the guest room. With two dull thuds, two shirtless men fell heavily to the ground. Liang Xuanzi also ran in at this time. She ignored the two men and went straight to Xu Wenwen and pulled her up from the ground. "Wenwen, are you okay?" When Xu Wenwen saw Liang Xuanzi, she couldn't hold back her tears anymore and hugged Liang Xuanzi and burst into tears. Lu Yu sighed heavily. "Lawyer Wang, check these two people to see if they have any criminal records. Also, help me sue this hotel. Two men and a woman came to book a room, and they actually opened it. If they don't give me an explanation this time, this matter will not end." "Okay, I'll arrange it right away." Wang Summing responded, took photos of the two men, and then left quickly. After he left, Lu Yu took out his cell phone and called the police. 7:10 p.m. Lu Yu and the other two walked out of the police station. After getting on, Lu Yu finally couldn't help it. He turned around and looked at Xu Wenwen, and said angrily, "I say, are you out of your mind? Huh? Two grown men, and they asked you to stay in the hotel, and most importantly, they just booked a room, and you followed them stupidly. What's in your head? Also, after you found out something was wrong, you had time to call Xiaozi. Why didn't you call the police? I'm here. If I wasn't here, how would you let Xiaozi save you? Idiot, you are a big idiot." Husband. Liang Xuanzi was frightened by Lu Yu's sudden outburst. Lu Yu's heart trembled, and he sat back down. He raised his hand to rub Liang Xuanzi's hair, shook his head and said, "I'm fine, it's just. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I've always wanted to sign a contract with a guild, because only by signing a contract can I get support and make money. I'm sorry." In the back seat, Xu Wenwen held her head and cried. Up to now, her emotions were finally vented. Otherwise, if she kept it in her heart, something bad would happen sooner or later. Because of what happened, Lu Yu did not let Xu Wenwen go back to the rental house, but took her back to Huahinting Yuan. Liang Xuanzi stayed with her until she fell asleep and left the bedroom. Looking at Lu Yu sitting on the sofa, Liang Xuanzi pursed her lips and walked over, nestled in Lu Yu's arms and said softly, "Hubby, Wenwen knows she was wrong, so don't be angry, okay?" Moo. Lu Yu leaned against the sofa, hugged Liang Xuanzi over, adjusted her posture, and made sure she was sitting comfortably before shaking his head and saying, "I'm not angry, I'm just angry at her for not fighting back, and I'm a little scared." "What are you afraid of?" Liang Xuanzi asked curiously. Lu Yu rested his chin on Liang Xuanzi's forehead and smiled bitterly. "What else could it be? Not only is she your best friend, but she has also taken care of you for several months. I remember this affection and I can see that she really treats you as her own sister. If she gets hurt, you will feel even worse, right?" Puff tilde Liang Xuanzi laughed happily, stretched out her hands and hugged Lu Yu's neck tightly. "Husband, why are you so good?" Lu Yu tapped her nose. "Is that all? Isn't this what I should do?" Liang Xuanzi shook her head. "No, it's not like that. Anyway, my husband is great. He's the best, most handsome, and most loving husband in the world. He, husband, I'm so happy." Ding. The host is detected to be doting on the target person. The target person's happiness value is greatly increased, and 20% of the shares of the Dosha live broadcast platform are obtained. Note, all the documents have been placed in the study, please pick them up by yourself. The sudden appearance of the system caused Lu Yu's brain to go blank for a moment. When Xu Wenwen got into trouble, Lu Yu was actually already thinking about whether to acquire a guild. Just as he said before, Xu Wenwen took care of Liang Xuanzi for several months, eating and living with her, and chatting with her to make Liang Xuanzi happy. He could not repay this kindness. In addition to the sisterhood between Liang Xuanzi and Xu Wenwen, if something happens to Xu Wenwen, the person who will suffer the most, apart from Xu Wenwen's parents, will definitely be Liang Xuanzi. Lu Yu naturally would not allow this situation to happen, so it was necessary to provide Xu Wen with a safe live broadcast environment. But he didn't expect that the system would be so considerate and directly give him 20% of the platform's shares. Although he didn't know much about the live broadcast industry, Dosha, as the largest live broadcast platform in China, is worth more than 8 billion yuan. The most important thing is that with this 210% of the shares, he can completely turn Xu Wenwen's live broadcast environment into an iron wall. After digesting the reward from the system, Lu Yu completely relaxed. He smiled and made a small gesture to Liang Xuanzi. Okay, we should go to rest, otherwise the baby will protest. Liang Xuanzi winked playfully. Really? Isn't it my husband who wants to protest? Chapter 14 Wedding. Lu Yu was slightly startled, and then he felt something was wrong. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he slapped Liang Xuanzi on the butt in annoyance. What are you talking about? Go to sleep. Lulu. Liang Xuanzi made a naughty face, giggled, and hugged Lu Yu's neck. Hubby, hug me. Lu Yu picked her up, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and walked towards the bedroom. The next day, at 6 in the morning. When Lu Yu walked out of the bedroom, Wang Yun had already arrived and was making breakfast. To his surprise, Xu Wenwen was also up and was helping Wang Yun cook. Seeing Lu Yu, Xu Wenwen thought of what happened yesterday again. She stood there with an embarrassed look on her face, lowering her head. Lu Yu, I'm sorry. Lu Yu glared at her unhappily and walked straight into the bathroom. His behavior made Xu Wen feel uneasy, and she stood there at a loss as to what to do. Wang Yun also learned about what happened yesterday from Xu Wenwen, so she had no intention of saying anything at this moment, because Xu Wenwen had to remember this matter thoroughly, otherwise it would happen again. As her daughter-in-law's best friend, Wang Yun certainly doesn't want Xu Wenwen to repeat the same mistake. Just when Xu Wenwen was about to collapse, Lu Yu came out with a handsome face and said, Don't think about signing with any guild in the future. I will call Doshar today and ask them to contact you directly. You can just sign with the company directly. Xu Wenwen trembled all over and suddenly looked up at Lu Yu. But Lu Yu completely ignored her expression, and frowned and said, Did you hear what I said? Xu Wenwen finally reacted and nodded repeatedly. I understand, thank you. Lu Yu nodded without comment. At this time, Liang Xuanzi came out of the bedroom in her pajamas, looking dazed. The assistant took Lu Yu's phone, rubbed her eyes and muttered, Honey, it's Sana's call. Lu Yu's mouth twitched slightly, and he glared at Xu Wenwen again, then quickly took the phone and answered, Sana, I'll be there right away. After that, he hung up the phone and looked up at Liang Xuanzi. Sana's wedding, you should also pack up and come with me. Liang Xuanzi's eyes widened suddenly. Artilder, I forgot, wait for me, I will clean it up right away. Seeing Liang Xuanzi running into the bathroom in a panic, Wang Yun, who was cooking, was stunned and turned to look at Lu Yu. No, I've already prepared the meal. Hurry, hurry, the wedding car will be here soon. Sana, what are you doing there? Are you ready? How's it going at the hotel? Has anyone gone to check? Second brother, what the hell are you doing? How are the arrangements at the hotel? Where's their wedding car? When will it arrive? Lao Wu, when will their wedding car arrive? 7:20. It won't delay the auspicious time. I'll call again. When Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi arrived at Li Meng's house, it was a complete mess. All the relatives and friends had arrived, and there were arrangements to be made. Li Meng had to do some pre-departure work and communicate with the hotel. In short, the whole scene was in chaos, and Lu Yu was completely stunned. No, it's not that he hadn't attended a wedding before, but this was the first time he had seen someone like Li Meng. Unlike Lu Yu, Liang Xuanzi was full of envy when looking at the prosperous atmosphere around her. Is this a wedding? She turned her head to glance at Lu Yu beside her, pursed her lips, raised a beautiful arc, and held Lu Yu's hand tightly. Sensing Liang Xuanzi's mood changes, Lu Yu turned his head and looked over. After discovering the desire in Liang Xuanzi's eyes, he whispered something in her ear. Liang Xuanzi's eyes lit up instantly. Really? Lu Yu smiled and nodded. Well, I will take you there after Sana's wedding is over. Liang Xuanzi nodded repeatedly, the desire in her eyes could no longer be hidden. But before she could say anything, Tong Junlin ran over and grabbed Lu Yu. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry, please lend me your husband first. After saying that, he didn't give Liang Xuanzi any chance to react and dragged Lu Yu away. Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. Being suddenly dragged away like this, Lu Yu almost kicked him. Boss, at least let me settle my wife down. She doesn't know anyone here. Tong Junlin waved his hand. Don't worry, I have arranged everything. Lu Yu turned around and saw a little girl of about 17 or 18 years old coming to Liang Xuanzi's side, mumbling something. Liang Xuanzi kept nodding her head. It seemed that the two of them were communicating well. Lu Yu was relieved and said, Tell me, what do you want me to do? Nonsense, go change your clothes. Best man, why are you going to wear this? Tong Junlin looked at Lu Yu like a fool. Lu Yu. Not far away, Liang Xuanzi was stunned after laughing, because she suddenly found that she didn't know anyone here. She didn't know what to do next. Who would save her? Just when she was at a loss, a girl ran over with a smile. Sister-in-law, are you brother Lu Yu's wife? Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Yeah? Who are you? The girl tilted her head and playfully took Liang Xuanzi's arm. My name is Zhu Mengmeng, and Zhu Yu is my brother. Zhu Yu? Lu Yu's second brother? Liang Xuanzi suddenly realized and smiled again. Don't you study? Zhu Mengmeng stuck out her tongue and said, I study at the #1 middle school affiliated to Haicheng University. Today is a holiday, so I came here to join in the fun. Hee, mainly because I haven't had a wedding banquet for a long time, so I'm a little greedy. Liang Xuanzi was amused by Zhu Mengmeng, but with Zhu Mengmeng's company, Liang Xuanzi's anxiety was completely relieved, and she followed Zhu Mengmeng upstairs. At 7:20 in the morning, the wedding car arrived on time, along with 2 buses that were to take Li Meng's relatives and friends to their hotel. From the time he arrived here until he got on the wedding car, Lu Yu was manipulated like a wooden man, changing his clothes, doing his hairstyle, and finally a makeup artist even came over to do his makeup. Fortunately, he reacted at the last moment, otherwise today would have been a lot of fun. No matter what others think, Lu Yu has always stayed away from things like makeup, even though he was a makeup artist himself. At 8:30, the wedding car arrived downstairs of Hu Yunyun's house. But what no one expected was that before they got out of the car, they saw a girl in a wedding dress running out of the building in front of the corridor, blocking the front of the wedding car. She turned her head and patted the car window. Open the door quickly, let's go quickly. Looking at Hu Yunyun in front of them, the entire wedding procession was stunned. Li Meng thought something had happened, so he quickly opened the car door and walked out. What happened? Hu Yunyun grabbed his shoulder and said, What's wrong? Hurry up and leave. It was impossible to leave. Just when Li Meng was stunned, a group of girls in bridesmaid dresses came running out from the corridor and surrounded the 2 of them, chattering. You stupid girl, you actually want to cut off our source of income. Tell me, how are you going to compensate us? Hu Yunyun, you know how long we spent thinking about these issues yesterday. Are you going to ruin it for us just like that? Don't say so much. I've calculated that we will get a total of 100 red envelopes. Groom, don't just stand there. Hurry up, or we sisters won't agree. Hu Yunyun looked at Li Meng with resentment, as if to say, got it. Li Meng scratched his hair stupidly, he was completely dumbfounded. No, what was wrong with his wedding ring or someone else's wedding ring? Feeling a little overwhelmed, he turned around and looked at Lu Yu and the others who were rushing towards him. At this time, let alone Li Meng, everyone present was shocked by Hu Yunyun's manipulation. How much hatred must one have to do such a thing? Fortunately, Li Meng was considered wealthy at this time. After giving out a lot of red envelopes, he and Hu Yunyun finally arrived in front of his father-in-law and mother-in-law. The bridesmaid was satisfied, the best man came to his senses, and their wedding was finally able to proceed as normal. But Li Meng was unable to react to what was happening until the wedding car started moving. Looking at Hu Yunyun beside him, his heart almost stopped beating. But at this time, Lu Yu no longer had the mind to think about these things. At this time, he was on the phone. It was from Coles from MAF, who told him the specific time of the dividend and asked about his entry procedures. Chapter 15 Dragon and Phoenix Robe. Hey, dear Lu, hello, do you remember our agreement? Yes, Kurtz, is the time confirmed? That's right, Lu. Next Wednesday morning, the company headquarters will announce the financial report and distribute dividends to shareholders for the previous quarter. Of course, Lu, there will also be your induction ceremony. I look forward to your arrival, Lu. Next Wednesday. Okay, I'll be there on time. After hanging up the phone, Lu Yu leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Beside him, Zhu Ning looked at him in a daze. However, Tong Junlin, who knew the situation, frowned. Youngest. You? Lu Yu shook his head. MAF called. My entry procedures have not been completed yet, and there are also stock dividends. I have to go there before next Wednesday. Tong Junlin suddenly realized and did not continue asking. However, Zhu Yu next to him could not sit still anymore. MAF is a famous super company in the world. How could an old man like Lu Yu have shares in it? Also, what is the onboarding process like? Which company does Lu Yu work for? Noticing that Ju Yu's expression was not right, Tong Junlin chuckled and whispered a few words in his ear. Then he saw Ju Yu's expression change from shock to astonishment, and finally to confusion, as if he was dreaming. Patting his shoulder gently, Tong Junlin chuckled, "I'll tell the others about this after the wedding." Okay. Ju Yu responded mechanically. As for whether he heard it or not, only he knew it. Although there was some morning rush hour, the wedding car still arrived at the hotel within the specified time. Liang Xuanzi was waiting at the door accompanied by Ju Mengmeng. When she saw someone coming, she couldn't stand still. If it wasn't inappropriate now, she would have wanted to rush over. More than 10 minutes later, Li Meng got out of the car holding Hu Yunyan's hand, and then the best men and bridesmaids followed out and rushed forward. Only Lu Yu was the last one to stay, and he chuckled at Liang Xuanzi who was standing there. Although the two of them had not yet come together, just this look made Ju Mengmeng, an inexperienced little girl, shiver and her teeth felt sore. "Oh Tilder, it's too choking, sister-in-law, I'll go in first, bye." After saying that, she turned around and ran away quickly without waiting for Liang Xuanzi to speak. She was afraid that she would become a big lemon if she stayed any longer. Liang Xuanzi's pretty face turned slightly red, but she still walked towards Lu Yu, and this scene was also seen by the bridesmaids walking in front. This is normal. After all, Lu Yu's temperament and appearance are there. When they first saw him, the bridesmaids had already conducted an in-depth analysis of him, and they almost fought over who would pursue Lu Yu. But when they saw Liang Xuanzi, especially the happiness and tenderness in their eyes, their thoughts were completely shattered, and they were all very jealous. As for stepping forward to snatch her away, sorry, I really don't have the courage. Liang Xuanzi's looks and figure are too good to be compared with. Even if all of them were added together, they would not be able to compare with her. In order to prevent accidents, Lu Yu directly reached out and put his arms around Liang Xuanzi's slender waist, holding her in his arms, and then walked into the wedding hall of the hotel. After entering, Lu Yu did not go to the front to join in the fun, but sat quietly at the back with Liang Xuanzi, watching Li Meng and Tong Junlin making jokes. Finally, under the MC's hosting, Li Meng and Hu Yunyan swore an oath, exchanged rings, and then... That's great. Liang Xuanzi suddenly spoke up and looked at Lu Yu with a smile. "Sir, will we be like this in the future?" Lu Yu nodded happily. "If you want, we can do it this way. If you want to use the Chinese style, that's fine too." He, my husband is so nice, Moo, I love you." Liang Xuanzi hugged Lu Yu happily, completely ignoring the feelings of the people around them who were jealous of them. After the ceremony, the bride and groom began to toast. This time, Lu Yu did not refuse to drink. Normally, he could not drink for Liang Xuanzi's safety, but today, it was unreasonable not to drink. However, Tong Junlin and Ju Yu took the initiative to take over the task of blocking the wine for Li Meng. The four of them were single, so it wouldn't matter if they got drunk, but Liang Xuanzi was pregnant, and no matter how much they liked to fool around, they couldn't let Lu Yu go back drunk at this time. Therefore, until the end of Shixia, Lu Yu had only drunk less than 2 taels of wine. Considering his physique, it was no different from not drinking at all. But for safety reasons, he still called a designated driver. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, in the Villa Manor of Genting Mansion. Lu Yu held Liang Xuanzi's hand and walked into the cloakroom. Yes, in this manner, the clothes were stored in a small attic with 2 floors. Is this outrageous? Just as Lu Yu pushed open the door, a bright red wedding gown with dragon and phoenix patterns instantly came into their sight. In front of the wedding gown are the phoenix corona and bridal robe, as well as the groom's hat and belt. Seeing the 2 wedding dresses, Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment. Then she let go of Lu Yu's hand, ran quickly to their wedding gowns, and reached out to touch them. Silky. This was Liang Xuanzi's first impression, but then she discovered something wrong. She stared at the silk patterns on their wedding gown in amazement and turned around and asked, "Honey, is it made of gold?" Although Lu Yu was a little confused, he calmed down when he thought about the wedding of Empress Xiaozong and Empress Zhang. He smiled and walked over. "Yes, it's made of gold, how is it? It's so beautiful." Liang Xuanzi was completely immersed in this dragon and phoenix wedding gown, muttering to herself, "If I wear this out, those Western-style wedding dresses will be completely unbearable." Lu Yu casually took off the phoenix robe and put it in Liang Xuanzi's hand. Go and try it. Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment, then she excitedly threw herself into Lu Yu's arms. Husband. I'm so happy, husband, you love me so much, how can I ever be worthy of you, woo? Lu Yu was amused by Liang Xuanzi. Okay, stop playing tricks. If you don't wear it, I'll assume you don't like it and sell it directly. No. Liang Xuanzi hugged the robe in her arms and glared at Lu Yu angrily. This is our family heirloom, you are not allowed to sell it. I'll go put it on, does my husband want to see it? Lu Yu choked, which made Liang Xuanzi giggle and she quickly ran into the next compartment. 10 minutes later, when Lu Yu saw Liang Xuanzi wearing a phoenix robe, a phoenix crown on her head, and a bridal veil on her shoulders, his brain exploded and he went completely blank. That's it, or it's because Liang Xuanzi didn't wear makeup, if. Liang Xuanzi chuckled and turned in front of Lu Yu. Your Majesty, am I beautiful? Lu Yu nodded, and suddenly reacted. Then he rushed to Liang Xuanzi and hugged her directly. Girl, your husband can't help it today. Liang Xuanzi's pretty face turned red, she buried her head in Lu Yu's arms, and whispered, Your Majesty, please have mercy on me. Chapter 16 Identity Exposed. While Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi were doing that in broad daylight in Genting Mansion, Li Meng had finally seen off all the guests and was now chatting with Tong Junlin and the others with Hu Yunyun. But ever since Tong Junlin told Zhu Yu Lu Yu's identity, he has been absent-minded, with an expression as if he wanted to say something but stopped. At this time, he was surrounded by familiar people. He finally couldn't hold it anymore. After entering the room, he threw his coat on the sofa, tugged at his tie, picked up a cup of hot water and drank it. Hotilder, it's finally over. Dad, can I tell you now? Otherwise, it's really uncomfortable to keep it in my heart. Tong Junlin smiled and nodded. Why not? Ask whatever questions you have, but first of all, I don't know a lot of things. My husband told me roughly yesterday. After all, I will be in charge of finance in the future, so I need to understand. No, what are you two talking about? Li Meng was stunned and looked at them in confusion. Zhang He and Peng Liang were not in much better condition, even Hu Yunyun felt dizzy. Zhu Yu patted Zhang He on the shoulder, then sat down next to him and said, Today, the boss told me that my husband is actually a super tycoon worth tens of billions. Not only does he own the Jingting building, a landmark in Haicheng, but he also owns 45% of Fanglong Technology and 20% of MAF Group. Can you believe it? Anyway, I was completely shocked at the time. Before Zhu Yu finished speaking, everyone present started to curse. Then they all focused their attention on Tong Junlin. After all, he was the only one who understood the situation. Tong Junlin spread his hands. Don't look at me like that, I just found out about this yesterday. Fuck. Peng Liang was the first to react. He jumped up and waved his fist excitedly. Fuck you. This old guy is so awesome. I'll brag about my brother being a billionaire for the rest of my life. Zhang He shook his head fiercely and looked at Li Meng and Hu Yunyun in astonishment. No, you are all in Haicheng, how come you two don't know about Sana? Li Meng pinched his thigh fiercely. The intense pain made him take a breath of cold air. He bit his tongue and said, I know nothing. Lu Zi is such a jerk. He can hold it in. Damn it. No, I have to call him. If I had known earlier, I would have eaten the Shu family's flavor. Isn't Tianlan Hotel delicious? Zhang He nodded. That's right, no wonder my sister-in-law doesn't care about the tens of thousands of dollars, so their family really has a mine. Lost, made a fortune. Hu Yunyun finally reacted at this time and slapped Li Meng on the face. Husband, does it hurt? Li Meng, who was in high spirits, was stunned by the slap. He turned his head and looked at Hu Yunyun in amazement. Do you think it hurts? Hu Yunyun shuddered and sighed heavily. Tell me, why did I fall for Li Meng back then? If I had known that Lu Zi was so capable, I would have chased him no matter what. Li Meng just felt that his little heart was completely pierced. Damn. Of course, he knew that Hu Yunyun was just talking. It's not that Hu Yunyun didn't have any feelings for Lu Yu, but she was just a little confused when she first saw Lu Yu. Later, she gave up on her own initiative. There was nothing she could do. She really couldn't win a fight. Peng Liang suddenly put his arm around Tong Junlin's shoulder and said with a smile, Hey guys, my husband has been hiding this from us for so long, isn't it a bit of a loss for just 10 meals? Should we rip him off for a few more? Zhang He rolled his eyes and said, Nonsense, we must eat more meals, otherwise it will be too cheap for him. Tong Junlin smiled as he watched his brothers discussing eating, but no one asked Lu Yu to take them. This was why he valued this brotherhood. Lu Yu is now on the rise and does not look down on them. They only have blessings for Lu Yu without any other interests involved. He didn't know how long their brotherhood could last, but he hoped it would last a lifetime, and it must last a lifetime. To this end, he was willing to make his best effort, and he believed that others thought the same. As the only woman present, Hu Yunyin's eyes were filled with envy. She also had roommates when she was in college, but there was intrigue in their dormitory almost every day. Later, she couldn't stand it anymore, so she just signed up to be a day student. As a result, she chose bridesmaids who were close to her neighbors, and didn't even call her college roommates bestie. She had that thing before, but it was completely useless since the moment that bestie asked her to leave Li Meng. Lu Yu didn't know what happened in Li Meng's family. At this moment, he was walking in the manor holding Liang Xuanzi's hand with a relaxed mood. Perhaps it was what happened in the afternoon that lifted their mood. In short, this manor, which they originally thought was a bit empty and even cold, was actually well planned at this time. Liang Xuanzi put on her original clothes and ran happily along the corridor. Her clear laughter made the whole manor feel pretty good at this moment. After a while, Liang Xuanzi stopped in front of the natural lake in the manor. It was May, and the lotus leaves in the lake had fully unfolded. The lotus flowers almost filled the entire lake, and a group of dragonflies were flying freely above the lotus flowers. Occasionally a few small fish jumped out of the water, splashing a lot of water. Seeing Lu Yu coming over, Liang Xuanzi snuggled into his arms and said, "Hubby, why don't we move here? I think it's nice here. And Mom and Dad, come over too. Otherwise, it's still a bit empty." Lu Yu bent down, picked a lotus flower and gave it to Liang Xuanzi. "Okay, I'll discuss it with Mom when I get back." Liang Xuanzi cherished an ordinary lotus flower especially because it had passed through Lu Yu's hands. Smelling the fragrance of the lotus flower, a smile bloomed on her face that was enough to make all the lotus flowers in the lotus pond pale in comparison. "My husband is so nice. I now feel more and more that I saved the Milky Way in my previous life. No, I saved the Milky Way for several lifetimes in a row. Otherwise, how could I have met such a nice husband like him, he. Little fool." Lu Yu rubbed her hair, rested his chin on the top of her head, and quietly enjoyed the peace that belonged to the two of them at this moment. Chapter 17 Fetal Movement. "Mom, we're back." In the evening, Huahan courtyard. As soon as she entered the room, Liang Xuanzi quickly threw herself into Wang Yun's arms, and rubbed her neck like a little suckling pig. Wang Yun hugged her happily and said, "Hey, girl, go slowly. Don't get hurt." He, Mom is so nice." Liang Xuanzi playfully hung on Wang Yun, smelling the fragrance coming from the kitchen, while Tilder Mom made delicious food again. "Moi, love you Tilder." Having said that, she ran into the kitchen impatiently, which made Wang Yun laugh and cry, but her eyes were full of relief and happiness. "Daughter, don't move. I'll serve it. Go sit over there. There's still a dish that's not ready. Mom will call you to eat later." Liang Xuanzi put a piece of meat into her mouth and nodded, "Well, good." Helplessly, Wang Yun had to bring out a plate of food and put it directly on the coffee table, then pushed Liang Xuanzi out and pressed her down on the sofa. "You can eat here, and I'll clean up after you're done." "Hey, thanks, Mom." Liang Xuanzi smiled happily and reached out to grab the food on the plate. But just when she was about to touch the dish, a pair of chopsticks suddenly appeared in the palm of her hand. When she looked up, she saw Lu Yu looking at her seriously. Liang Xuanzi shrank her neck suddenly, smiled guiltily, picked up a piece of food with chopsticks and handed it to Lu Yu's mouth. "Hubby, do you want to eat?" Lu Yu flicked her head on the forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Naughty boy, eat slowly." "Well, thank you, old man." Liang Xuanzi happily put the dish into her mouth, with an intoxicated look on her face. Afterwards, she took out her mobile phone, opened TikTok, and started watching videos. Looking at Liang Xuanzi, who was sitting cross-legged and had no ladylike image at all, Lu Yu patted his forehead with a headache, and then pinched her nose. "You eat first, I'll make a phone call." Liang Xuanzi nodded without even raising her head. "Yeah, my husband is busy, don't worry about me." Lu Yu shook his head and went into the study. Then, based on the information transmitted by the system, he found the equity change agreement of Dosha Live, found the phone number of the current person in charge of Dosha and called him. At the Dosha platform headquarters, President Chen Zhang was listening to his secretary's work report when suddenly his personal cell phone on the table rang. Chen Zhang was stunned for a moment, then he picked up the phone. Looking at the unfamiliar caller, he frowned, then waved his hand to signal his secretary to leave first. After the secretary closed the office door, he answered the phone. "Hello? This is Chen Zhang, who are you?" "I'm Lu Yu, Mr. Chen should know me, right?" Listening to their voice on the phone, Chen Zhang's heart trembled. Lu Yu. After a brief moment of confusion, Chen Zhang suddenly came back to his senses. Just yesterday, he received a report from his secretary saying that someone had directly acquired 2% plus of Dosha's shares. That person seemed to be Lu Yu? After recalling Lu Yu's identity, Chen Zhang suddenly became nervous. You know, the entire Dosha's equity had long been fragmented due to financing. Even he, the founder, currently only holds 20.5% of the shares. Except for the stocks distributed after the listing, most of the other shares are held by major investors. But now, someone suddenly completed the acquisition of 20% of the shares. Regardless of whether Dosha is valuable or not, just the means used made Chen Zhang terrified. After all, Lu Yu could acquire 20%, and more is not impossible. What if? Chen Zhang didn't dare to think about it. Shaking his head vigorously, Chen Zhang calmed down a little and continued, "It turned out to be Mr. Lu. I wonder why Mr. Lu called." Lu Yu chuckled, "Don't worry, Mr. Chen. I'm not interested in managing the company. I just want to lie down comfortably and make money. I called you today mainly because my wife's best friend is an anchor on our platform. She has been neither popular nor unpopular. Mr. Chen, can you take care of the arrangements?" Chen Zhang breathed a sigh of relief. "Okay, I'll arrange it later. Does Mr. Lu have any other instructions?" "Okay, then I'll wait for Mr. Lu's call." After hanging up the phone, Chen Zhang received a text message from Lu Yu. It was from Xu Wenwen's live broadcast account. Looking at this extremely unfamiliar account, Chen Zhang pondered for a moment and tapped the table lightly. "Secretary Wu, go call Minister Gao over." In the study, after Lu Yu sent the account of Xu Wenwen's live broadcast room, he no longer cared about this matter. He believed that with the shares he currently held, Chen Zhang would not cause him any trouble on this matter. There was no need to do so. What's more, he is just an anchor, so he can just push it. He can just make up some data in the background to shut everyone up. This is not the first time that Dosha has done this, so Lu Yu has no psychological burden at all. At the same time, in Xu Wenwen's rental house, Xu Wenwen has been lying in bed for a whole day, without eating or drinking water. She seems to have completely lost her energy. It can be seen that the impact of yesterday's events has just begun to take its toll on her. She wanted to call Liang Xuanzi, but she didn't know what to say. After all, what she did yesterday was indeed a bit stupid. Most importantly, after what happened yesterday, she was a little afraid of Lu Yu. Suddenly, the alarm clock rang. It was the live broadcast time she had set. She had already started several broadcasts, but today she really couldn't muster the heart to broadcast live. Even if she reluctantly broadcast it, it would probably discourage many fans. At this moment, she felt for the first time that this not-so-big rental house was actually a bit empty. "When the flowers bloom, come and see me." Just when Xu Wenwen was about to close her eyes and rest, her cell phone suddenly rang. She was slightly startled, and suddenly thought of Lu Yu's words. She quickly picked up the phone and asked tremblingly, "Hello, this is Xu Wen, who are you?" "Hello, I'm Gao Shuru from the Dosha Operations Department. I'm here to sign a contract with you, Miss Xu. When will you be free? I'll go to Haicheng and we can meet then." Xu Wenwen's heartbeat suddenly stopped for a moment. Gao Shuru? Was it the Gao Shuru she knew? Thinking about what Lu Yu said in the morning, Xu Wen suddenly laughed. The next day, in the early morning, a scream filled with surprise woke up Lu Yu from his daze. Looking at Liang Xuanzi, whose face was filled with excitement, and then looking at the sky outside which was just turning white, Lu Yu was stunned. Seeing Lu Yu wake up, Liang Xuanzi happily hugged his neck. "Husband, do you know? Just now I felt the baby move, they moved, so happy, so happy." Boom. Lu Yu felt his brain go blank in an instant, and then he quickly helped Liang Xuanzi down, let her lie down, and then gently placed his ear on her belly. Looking at Lu Yu's cautious movements, Liang Xuanzi's eyes narrowed, and her whole face was filled with sweetness and happiness. Raising her hand and touching Lu Yu's hair, she chuckled under the power. Husband, it's not moving now. Stop making trouble, let me listen. Lu Yu patted Liang Xuanzi's hand, trying his best to clear his mind and trying hard to hear the sounds in his stomach. Suddenly, an extremely weak force was transmitted to his face through his belly. Lu Yu's eyes suddenly widened, and then he jumped off the bed, waving his fists excitedly, his face flushed with excitement. I heard it, and I felt it, it's really moving, wife, they are really moving, okay, I have to listen again. As he said that, he put his head on it again, and at the same time stretched out his hand to gently stroke Liang Xuanzi's belly, smiling foolishly. Baby, move gently, otherwise your mother will not be able to bear it. Babies must be obedient, otherwise when you come out, your father will spank you. She didn't know whether it was Lu Yu's words or Liang Xuanzi's inner voice that worked, but she suddenly felt a weak force on her stomach again, as if a child was kicking her stomach with its little feet. Feeling that weak power, Lu Yu was already crazy with joy. For a moment, he wanted to continue listening to the children's movements, but was worried that he would crush the baby. He sat there, trying to figure out whether to get up or not. He felt distressed, and the expression on his face was twisted beyond recognition. Click. Just when Lu Yu was struggling, a flash of light suddenly came on, and then Liang Xuanzi's happy laughter was heard. Har har, husband, look at your expression, har har, why are you so ugly, hee hee, but if you look closely, you are still very handsome. Lu Yu looked at the photo on his phone and was completely dumbfounded. He pointed at his nose and said, no. Is this me? Damn it, delete it quickly. This is such a shame. No way, Lu Yu. Liang Xuanzi dodged Lu Yu's attack, but she was lying down and Lu Yu was lying on his stomach. How could she possibly dodge it? Just when Lu Yu was about to catch her, she suddenly put her hand on her belly and said aggrievedly, babies, daddy is bullying mommy, hurry up and protect mommy. At this moment, there was a sound of a door opening outside. Lu Yu was stunned for a moment, raised his hand and patted Liang Xuanzi on the buttocks. Little rascal, mom is here, hurry up and get up, I will go tell mom the good news first. Liang Xuanzi nodded happily, and after Lu Yu left, she took out her phone again and looked at it, admiring her own masterpiece. But after looking at it for a while, she deleted the photo and muttered, Humph Tilder, my husband is always the most handsome. I don't want to have such an advantage. Outside, Wen Yun heard Lu Yu's words, and after a brief moment of daze, she nodded, yes, it's 4, and fetal movement is normal. Xiaozi is pregnant with quadruplets after all, so for safety reasons, you should take time to take her to the hospital to make sure there is no problem. Lu Yu nodded repeatedly, okay, I'll call Dr. Lin later. After watching Wen Yun walk into the kitchen, Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief, sat on the sofa, grinned for a while, and started to wash up. However, after coming out of the bathroom, he couldn't hold back his emotions, so he simply dug out Liang Xuanzi's photo, posted it on his Moments, and left a message. First fetal movement, the babies finally know how to respond to their daddy, happy hearts. In the bedroom, Liang Xuanzi looked at Lu Yu's circle of friends with some surprise. As his bedmate, she had asked Lu Yu clearly and knew that Lu Yu never posted on WeChat Moments. She didn't expect that he would post one today. Chapter 18, I love you for the first time. Seeing this post on WeChat Moments, Liang Xuanzi suddenly felt jealous and left a message angrily. Bad husband, that's the baby responding to me, the mom, humph, you scumbag who gets bored with the old and loves the new, baby. Lu Yu. Soon, more people saw this post on WeChat Moments. The friends and brothers who originally wanted to say some words of congratulations, after seeing Liang Xuanzi's message, suddenly became jealous, and their words of congratulations turned into complaints. Tong Junlin, youngest, sister-in-law, isn't it a bit too much to have dog food flying everywhere so early in the morning? Ju Yu, there are lemons on the lemon tree, but I'm the only one left under the lemon tree. I'm dying of sourness. Peng Liang, I'm so jealous. When will I be able to find a way out of being single? Youngest, Sana, you too can help me, R. Li Meng, don't ask me about this. Yun Yun has very few friends. Asking me about this makes me old. Damn, even a married person like me is jealous. Soon, this only circle of friends became a place for the brothers to chat. Messages kept popping up one after another, which made Lu Yu's mouth twitch. He couldn't help but leave a message. I said you want to chat, can you just call me? This is the memorial place of my baby's first fetal movement. What the hell are you talking about here? Get out of here. Liang Xuanzi in the bedroom was laughing so hard that she was flipping through her phone. Her laughter went straight out through the door. Hearing the laughter in the bedroom, Lu Yu's head was full of black lines. He quickly stood up and walked over, gritting his teeth and said, Liang Xuanzi, get up quickly, otherwise your husband will be angry. Huh. Liang Xuanzi's laughter suddenly stopped, and she looked at Lu Yu cautiously. I'll get up right away, don't be angry, Moo, I love you. Lu Yu lost his temper instantly, and pointed at her with a helpless look. Hurry up, let's go to the hospital after dinner to see if there is any problem. Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue. Got it, I promise to complete the task. 9:30 in the morning. Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Haicheng 3rd Hospital. Lu Yu looked at Dr. Lin with gratitude. Dr. Lin, thank you for troubling you again. Dr. Lin chuckled and shook his head. This is as it should be, and you are the first quadruplets I have seen since I started practicing medicine, so it is my greatest wish to see you all healthy. While talking, Dr. Lin also wrote a prescription and handed it to Lu Yu. He smiled and touched Liang Xuanzi's belly and said, It's okay. It's normal for the fetus to move after more than 4 months. It also shows that your baby is healthy. You can take more vitamins when you go back. You can take the pregnancy maintaining medicine once every month. After all, medicine is 3/4 toxic. It's best not to take it. Thank you, I've made note of that. Dr. Lin, we won't bother you anymore. Lu Yu smiled and nodded, then he helped Liang Xuanzi out. Just as they were about to walk out of the room, they suddenly heard a voice calling Lu Yu. Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw a long-haired girl in a doctor's uniform running over quickly. She looked Lu Yu up and down and said, It's really you? When you came in just now, I felt familiar with you. I thought I had recognized you by mistake. Are you bringing your wife here for a pregnancy checkup? Liang Xuanzi looked at Lu Yu with a frivolous look on her face, then looked at the girl. Well, hello, may I ask who you are? Mu Qingwan, we are the school belle of the same class. Lu Yu explained with a smile, then looked at Mu Qingwan in front of him and said, Aren't you studying abroad? Yes. Mu Qingwan nodded, then turned in front of Lu Yu, pointed to the identity card on her chest and said, See. This is the result of my 5 years of studying abroad. Lu Yu was slightly stunned. Chief physician. Mu Qingwan seemed very dissatisfied with Lu Yu's expression, and rolled her eyes angrily. Lu Yu, do you understand what it means to be a chief physician? I am a special recruit, do you understand special recruit? Forget it, I can't explain it to you. Mu Qingwan rolled her eyes at Lu Yu, then smiled and took Liang Xuanzi's arm. Sisters, how did you get this blockhead? You don't know how many beautiful girls wanted to pursue him in school. He threw thousands of love letters at least. At first, we all thought he was a G. Liang Xuanzi chuckled and said, It's nothing, we are childhood sweethearts. Mu Qingwan suddenly realized, no wonder you looked down on me back then, it turns out you already had such a beautiful childhood sweetheart. TSK, Lu Yu, you are not being honest. Lu Yu's mouth twitched slightly, and he shook his head with a smile. By the way, what about you? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you want me to introduce you to one? Come on, don't think I don't know that except for Li Meng, the other 4 people in your dormitory are all single. Sorry, I don't have any feelings for them. You, my friend, just go with the flow. When you feel the feeling, we'll talk about it. Mu Qingwan's words directly blocked everything Lu Yu wanted to say next, and almost choked Lu Yu to death. Okay, if that's the case, then we won't disturb you from working. Let's get together again when we have time. Okay, I heard you're rich now, so don't be reluctant to treat me to a meal when the time comes. Bye. After Mu Qingwan finished speaking, she smiled and left. She walked away cleanly and neatly without any delay. Her action also made Liang Xuanzi let down her guard and she looked at Lu Yu curiously. Lu Yu pondered for a moment, then explained as he walked, Mu Qingwan is not from the same department as us, but the boss pursued her for a while at that time. Although it didn't work out, she still admired the boss's character, so we became friends and occasionally got together for dinner. She went abroad to study in the 4th year of college. I thought I would never see her again in this life, but I didn't expect her to come back. Have you ever liked her? Liang Xuanzi asked curiously, blinking her beautiful big eyes. Lu Yu was stunned for a moment. No, I was just thinking about how to make money. How could I care about who looks good? It would only affect the speed at which I make money. Liang Xuanzi was a little angry when she heard this, but thinking about Lu Yu's reaction when she first approached him, plus Lu Yu's current assets, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. Fetal, you are really a fool. Fortunately, your dear wife is wise and brave. She used extraordinary means to take you down at the most critical moment, otherwise you would be single for the rest of your life. Seeing Liang Xuanzi's expression of, come and thank me, Lu Yu rubbed her hair with a smile on his face. Yes, my wife is really amazing. Let's go. It's too late and mom will be worried. Kiss. No, there are too many people here, let's kiss each other when we get back. My shy husband is so cute. Liang Xuanzi's sneak attack was successful. She gave herself a thumbs up and got into the car laughing. Lu Yu sighed again, opened the car door and got in. After starting the car, he thought for a while and said, by the way, I may have to go abroad next week. After hearing this, Liang Xuanzi's smile froze for a moment. Is it about MAF company? Well, if I go over to take a look at their finances, since it involves dividends, it would be more appropriate for me to go there in person. But I promise that I will be back in 3 days at most. Liang Xuanzi was silent for a while. She wanted to go with him, but her body would not allow it. If she was pregnant with only one child, she would definitely stick with him, but now. But she quickly adjusted her mood and said with a smile, it's okay, the baby and I will wait for you at home. Lu Yu hummed and raised his hand to stroke Liang Xuanzi's face. No one knew Liang Xuanzi's emotions better than him. Although the two of them have obtained their marriage certificate, Liang Xuanzi still feels very insecure. The main reason is that they have never experienced a normal relationship. Lu Yu even forgot about her existence before. She made the decision completely on the spur of the moment, and brought the child to force Lu Yu to be with her, so she worried almost every day whether Lu Yu would suddenly disappear. Feeling the warmth on Lu Yu's palm, Liang Xuanzi playfully patted his hand. Okay, I'm not a child anymore, and I still have my mom to accompany me. Lu Yu smiled and nodded. Well, my baby is the strongest, I love you. Liang Xuanzi was slightly stunned, then suddenly looked up at Lu Yu. Husband, what did you say? Lu Yu then remembered that this was the first time he had said, I love you, since they started dating. He immediately felt guilty and looked at Liang Xuanzi lovingly. I say, honey, I love you. Liang Xuanzi wanted to hug Lu Yu happily, but was held back by the seat belt. The expression on her face froze instantly, and she pouted lovingly. Bad husband, why did you say that while driving? The baby is angry. Having said that, the corners of her mouth raised in a very beautiful arc. At the same time, the system's voice came again in Lu Yu's mind. Ding. Chapter 19, Love Feedback. Ding. The host is detected to be doting on the target person. The target person's happiness value is greatly increased, and the target person gains physical fitness plus 10 vice, and a cash reward of 10 million. Note, all cash has been transferred to their host's account through legal channels. Please feel free to use it. For the rest of my life, the wind and snow are you, the plainness is you, and the gentleness is also. In the car, Liang Xuanzi sang happily, holding the seat belt lightly with both hands, and glanced at Lu Yu who was driving from time to time, with an unconcealable sweetness on the corners of her mouth. Lu Yu chuckled and silently added all 10 points of physical fitness to Liang Xuanzi. She was now the focus of protection. The stronger her physical fitness was, the better the treasures would be. Healthy, so that she and the babies will not suffer when giving birth. Half an hour later, Huahan Courtyard. Mom, we're back. As soon as she entered the room, Liang Xuanzi ran into Wang Yun's bedroom without even changing her shoes, and hugged her playfully. Hey, Mom, today you said he loves me, he said he loves me, hey. Wang Yun was originally making insoles. When she saw Liang Xuanzi, she hurriedly put aside the needle and thread in her hand, for fear of hurting Liang Xuanzi. Seeing her daughter-in-law's happy look, she couldn't help but laugh. She raised her hand to straighten Liang Xuanzi. This brat, he still has a conscience. How are the babies? Liang Xuanzi hummed and arched in Wang Yun's arms, and said in a low voice, the doctor said I'm healthy, and I'm healthy too. That's good. Go out now. Mom will make you a pair of insoles. The ones you bought are too uncomfortable. Liang Xuanzi was slightly stunned, looking at the insole on the bed, and quickly stuck out her tongue, humming as she hugged Wang Yun tightly, and had an intimate hug with her. Mom, why are you so nice? Then I'll go out. Wang Yun was so happy. Now she finally understood what it felt like to have a daughter. It was really great. Especially Liang Xuanzi's personality made her like her very much. Seeing Liang Xuanzi running out in a hurry, she hurriedly said, "By the way, what do you want to eat for lunch? Mom will make it for you." Liang Xuanzi paused, and poked her head out from the door frame. "Everything my mom cooks tastes good, love." Wang Yun smiled, shook her head, picked up the needle and thread, and continued with the work in her hands. At the same time, she was thinking about what to make for lunch. Outside, Lu Yu, who had just sat down and turned on the TV, was startled when he saw Liang Xuanzi almost jumping over. He ran over quickly and grabbed the naughty girl. He flicked her head on the forehead in annoyance. "What are you doing? Aren't you afraid that the baby will fall suddenly?" Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue and pouted to show her dissatisfaction, but she still obediently let Lu Yu pull her to the sofa and sit down. After putting Liang Xuanzi on the sofa, Lu Yu asked, "What is mom doing?" "Making insoles, they are only for me, not for you Tilder." Liang Xuanzi's bright black eyes rolled around. "Unless you say you love me again, I'll let mom make a pair for you too, okay?" "Hey!" Lu Yu was so angry that he laughed. "No, Liang Xuanzi, you should understand, she is my biological mother, your mother-in-law. What do you think? Okay, I love you." Liang Xuanzi pouted, "So perfunctory, I won't pay attention to you, humph, I will go and complain to my mother, you bully me." "Oh shit." Seeing Liang Xuanzi about to get up, Lu Yu rushed over and held her tightly in his arms, and goosebumps appeared on his body. If Liang Xuanzi were to go, he would definitely be beaten up. He didn't understand. He was obviously the biological child, so why did he now seem to be less valuable than the one who was adopted? Liang Xuanzi was so amused by Lu Yu's actions that she lay directly in his arms, giggling. Hearing this crisp laughter, Lu Yu couldn't help laughing himself. He lifted Liang Xuanzi's little head and looked straight into her eyes. "Wife, how can you be so cute?" Liang Xuanzi tilted her head and blinked her eyes. "Does my husband like it?" "I like it." Lu Yu nodded. "My husband is almost fascinated by you, are you happy?" Liang Xuanzi wanted to jump up excitedly, but was locked down by the restraining force from all directions. As soon as she finished speaking, she was stunned and twisted her body in dissatisfaction. "Let me go." Lu Yu felt the movement in his arms, and was completely stunned. He quickly put Liang Xuanzi aside and stood up quickly. "Well, I'm going to buy some groceries. What do you want to eat for lunch?" "Liang Xuanzi?" Just as the question mark appeared on her face, she noticed Lu Yu's strangeness, burst into laughter, then moved her body to Lu Yu's side, leaned over to whisper in his ear. But before he could finish his words, Lu Yu ran away. Yes, he ran away. After rushing into the elevator, he heaved a sigh of relief, looked down with a bitter face, and said through gritted teeth, "This little devil, sooner or later I will make you obedient." At this time, his cell phone rang. He took it out and looked at the incoming call. After adjusting his breathing, he answered the call. "Hello? Boss, what's going on?" Tong Junlin on the other end of the phone smiled and responded, "Nothing, I've already started working today, but Mr. Xia here doesn't seem to trust me, so I have no choice but to call you first." Lu Yu suddenly realized and forgot to tell Xia Peng. He pressed the button for the first floor and said, "Then give the phone to Mr. Xia and I will talk to him." Meanwhile, upstairs, Wang Yun walked out of the bedroom and looked at Liang Xuanzi, who was laughing foolishly on the sofa, and asked suspiciously, "Where's your husband?" Liang Xuanzi was suddenly awakened and jumped. When she saw that it was Wang Yun, she relaxed. "He went to buy vegetables." "Pfft. Mom, I'm telling you." Listening to Liang Xuanzi's complaints, Wang Yun's expression became more and more strange. Finally, she couldn't help laughing first. She raised her hand and tapped Liang Xuanzi's forehead. "You, don't tease him like this in the future, otherwise it might really cause problems." Liang Xuanzi stuck out her tongue. "It's okay, I have a way." Wang Yun shook her head. "It's up to you guys. If he goes to buy groceries, I'll wait a little longer and make you something delicious later." "Thank you, Mom." "Long live Mom." "Okay, that's it, sir. From now on, I'll leave everything over there to you." "Okay, I'll sort out the finances here within 5 days at most." Tong Junlin paused for a moment, then continued, "Youngest, can I go with you to the MAF headquarters next Wednesday? Just to get familiar with the place where you will be working in the future." Lu Yu paused for a moment, then returned to normal. "Okay, if you can finish your work here before we go over, then we can go together." "Thanks, that's definitely no problem. Bye-bye." Tong Junlin said, then hung up the phone. Putting away his phone, Lu Yu pondered for a moment, put the matter in his heart, and walked quickly towards the supermarket center in the community. But just as he was about to walk into the supermarket, he suddenly felt a counterforce on his legs. Looking down, I found that it was a little girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, with a pair of big round eyes that kept blinking, and a round face full of collagen, which looked particularly lovely. Chapter 20, Chatting Up. Slightly stunned, Luyu smiled and squatted down. Little sister, what happened? Did you get separated from your parents? The little girl shook her head. No, I came here specifically to see my uncle. Eh? Luyu laughed. Then tell me, why did you come to see your uncle? Because uncle is handsome. The girl put a finger to her lips, looking as if it was a matter of course. Luyu was amused by this and raised his hand to touch the top of the little girl's head. That won't work either, because there are many bad guys who are also very good looking. What if they catch you? The little girl tilted her head and thought for a while, then nodded in agreement. Then uncle, are you a bad person? Luyu couldn't hold it anymore and burst into laughter. Uncle, no, uncle is going to buy groceries. Go find mom quickly, otherwise mom will be worried. Okay. The little girl sighed. Originally, I wanted to introduce my mother to uncle. I'll tell you in secret, my mother is very beautiful. I want uncle to be my father. Cough cough, Luyu was startled and looked at the girl in front of him in amazement. At this moment, a beautiful figure ran over quickly from a distance and grabbed the little girl by the collar. Luotingting, what are you doing? Don't you even tell me before running away. Luotingting curled her lips and said, isn't this for your lifelong event? Hey, your parents this year are too difficult to deal with. Forget it, uncle, can you leave me your contact information? If I have time, I'll let my mother call you. The woman's mind was filled with black lines instantly. She raised her hand and slapped Luotingting's little butt. I'll deal with you when I get home. After she finished speaking, she looked at Luyu, but when she saw Luyu, she was stunned, and then a complex emotion flashed in her eyes. Luotingting raised her head proudly. How is it? Did I do something good this time? The woman blushed. Seeing the mother and daughter getting more and more out of tune, Luyu's mind went blank, and he hurriedly said to them, sorry, I'm married, I have to go buy groceries and cook for my wife now, sorry. Before he could finish his words, Luyu fled in a panic. After hearing Luyu's words, the two girls were completely stunned. They looked at each other and then sighed at the same time. Luotingting looked at her mother with hatred. I told you a long time ago, do it, but you didn't listen to me. Now, such a handsome uncle has become someone else's. Are you upset? The woman was about to nod, but suddenly she thought of something and raised her hand to slap Luotingting on the butt. No, Luotingting, is that what I meant? Also, who told you that you don't have a father? Your father is just not at home now. And Luotingting pouted, don't think I don't know. My father died, and I know he is a hero. I have seen his photo. The woman opened her mouth, shook her head, and walked away holding Luotingting. Luyu didn't know what was going on here. He rushed into the supermarket before slowing down. He slapped his face with a smile and said, well, I should take my wife with me when I go out next time. What's going on? At the same time, inside the Jingting building. Outside Luyu's office, Xia Peng had already brought over all the financial statements of the entire Jingting building, as well as the financial statements of Tianxin property. Tong Junlin took the report with a smile, and then extended his hand to Xia Peng. Sorry for bothering you, Mr. Xia. Xia Peng smiled and shook his head. Nothing, I'm just serving the boss, it's not hard work. Then Assistant Tong, you go ahead. Okay. Tong Junlin nodded in response and sent Xia Peng out. After watching Xia Peng enter the elevator, he returned to his seat, looked at the pile of financial reports, took a deep breath, stretched his muscles and said, let's get started. After Xia Peng walked out of the elevator, a young man ran over quickly, looked at the empty elevator behind him, frowned and said, Boss Xia, is that really the person sent by the new boss? Do you have any objections? Xia Peng glanced at the young man and said, this is the new boss's business. Isn't it normal for him to send someone here? Let me tell you, the new boss has done a good job. He didn't lay off any of you, and he also gave you bonuses and benefits. Don't be ungrateful. If anyone lets me hear any noise in the company that shouldn't be heard, don't blame me for turning my back on you. The young man was startled and shook his head hurriedly. Mr. Xia, that's not what I meant. What do you mean by you? Go back to work and remember to do your job well. Don't worry about the rest. It's not your business to worry about it. Yes. After the young man left, Xia Peng stood there in a daze for a while. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel uncomfortable at all, but he was still very capable of regulating his emotions. What's more, Lu Yu was really good to him. The price of acquiring Tianqin properties was 0.5% higher than the market value, and he was also retained to continue managing Tianqin. With such a great favor, what else could he be dissatisfied with? Fortunately, Lu Yu didn't know what he was thinking, otherwise Lu Yu would have to face the system table again. He really understood his intentions too well. In the kitchen, Wang Yun was processing ingredients and preparing lunch. Lu Yu sat on the sofa, looking at Liang Xuanzi, who was sitting there fiddling with her phone and giggling from time to time, and suddenly asked, "Have you told your mother about the move?" Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment and shook her head. "Oh, I forgot." But after she finished speaking, she frowned slightly. "Husband, do we really want to move? It's up to you. If you don't want to, then don't move." Lu Yu didn't care. After all, their house was just that, and it was quite comfortable to live here. Liang Xuanzi was a little conflicted. After all, the environment at Genting Mansion was really good, with flowing water, small bridges and houses. Plus, it was just the beginning of summer, the season when everything was lush and green, and even the air there was sweet. The only downside was that the place was too big. Even if all four of them moved in, it would still seem very empty. Liang Xuanzi liked hustle and bustle, and she was worried that something might go wrong if she stayed there for a long time. I'm so conflicted. Let my husband make the decision. I'll listen to him." Liang Xuanzi fell down on the sofa with a thud. Such a rash action almost scared Lu Yu to death. He quickly hugged her and said, "Hey, my little ancestor, can you be more careful? You are now dealing with 5 lives." Just as she was about to protest, a weak force suddenly came from her stomach, which immediately blew away all her protests. She shrugged her nose and lay in Lu Yu's arms. "Okay, I'll try my best." Lu Yu opened his mouth, wanting to say something but stopping himself. "Well, I'd better watch out for it in the future." Seeing Liang Xuanzi looking a little depressed, Lu Yu suddenly whispered in her ear, "Wife, let me tell you a secret. Just now, someone approached me." Liang Xuanzi stopped complaining and looked at Lu Yu nervously. "What's going on? You didn't agree, did you? Did you give me your contact information? Did you arrange a time for the next meeting?" And boom! Lu Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he flicked her head on the forehead. "What are you thinking about?" Then, he told Liang Xuanzi what had just happened. Liang Xuanzi was completely dumbfounded after hearing it. A 5 or 6-year-old girl looking for a partner for her mother? Are you kidding? But why did she suddenly feel more relaxed? Liang Xuanzi even wanted to meet Luo Tingting again to see what kind of clever little girl she was. Seeing Liang Xuanzi's mood recovered, Lu Yu breathed a sigh of relief, put her back on the sofa, walked to the kitchen and helped Wang Yun prepare the ingredients. Wang Yun, who was blanching water, turned around and looked over. "What's the matter?" Lu Yu nodded. No one knows a son better than his mother. Moreover, he came here to discuss something. So when Wang Yun asked, he didn't hide his thoughts and said openly, "It's like this. Some time ago, Yunding Mansion gave me a villa. I was thinking about moving there for a while. The environment there is very good, which is good for Xiaozi and the child. But that place is too big, so I came here to discuss it with you." Chapter 21, Change of Thought. After hearing what Lu Yu said, Wang Yun almost threw the pot in her hand away. She turned around and looked at her son in shock. "A gift? That's right, Wang Yun doesn't care about the size of the villa. After all, she has gradually adapted to her son's billionaire status, so the villa she gave him. The most important thing is, how old should the child be if he is to be considered old enough to be called old? Besides, she had been in Haicheng for more than a year or two, so of course she had heard about the villas in Genting Mansion, which cost hundreds of millions. Such a large industry being given away at will was completely beyond her understanding. Seeing Lu Yu nod, Wang Yun finally confirmed it and frowned. "Since it's good for Xiaozi, then go over there. What do you want to discuss with me?" Lu Yu smiled bitterly. "I have to discuss this with you, because you have to go there too. As I said before, it's too big over there. If you don't go, it will be too empty for us to go. Forget it. If you have nothing to do this afternoon, let's go over there and take a look. You can make the decision then." Well, okay, then let's go over to take a look this afternoon. I tell you, little brat, what are you hiding from us? You'd better tell us right now, and don't scare us all the time. Aren't you afraid that your wife and I will suffer from neurasthenia because of you one day? Wang Yun glared at her son and scolded him. Lu Yu, is there any way to tell? Who knows what rewards the system will give in the future? Oh, now he still has shares in Dosha that his family doesn't know about, but the key is that this is not all. If it was all, he would have given it up. Therefore, Wang Yun's words really made him a little unsure of how to respond. Thinking of this, Lu Yu hurriedly put down the food in his hand, turned around and said, well, I have something else to do, so I'll go out first. Remember to call my dad and we'll go there together this afternoon. There's everything there, including clothes and daily necessities. If you want, we can stay there tonight. Before he finished speaking, he had disappeared. Wang Yun's mouth twitched slightly. She suppressed the urge to beat up this brat. She shook her head in a helpless manner and continued cooking. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Genting Mansion. Wang Yun and Lu Qinming stood in the yard in amazement, looking at the pavilions on both sides and the 3-story villa on the front, and began to doubt their lives. After nearly a minute, Wang Yun turned around and looked at Lu Yu with a complicated expression. Stinky boy, is this what you call big? Lu Yu blinked and said, isn't it big? Poof. Wang Yun almost vomited blood. She raised her hand and slapped Lu Yu on the back of his head. You bastard, is this a big deal? Is this a place we can live in? Having said that, Wang Yun turned around and prepared to leave. Lu Yu, who was quick-witted, quickly reached out and grabbed her. Mom, whether you want to live here or not, this place is ours now. Do you want to watch it gather dust? Then sell it. We can't afford to live here anyway. The properties here are not allowed to be bought or sold. Not only this one, but all the villas around it are given away. Lu Qinming finally reacted at this time. In comparison, his psychological endurance was stronger than that of Wang Yun, so after a brief contemplation, he said, wife, stay here first. If you are not used to it, we can talk about it later. Wang Yun. Evening. Lu Yu and Lu Qinming sat on rocking chairs beside the lotus pond, listening to the gurgling sound of water and watching Liang Xuanzi and Wang Yun spinning around not far away, feeling indescribably comfortable. Son, do you know? I, your father, have never been so relaxed in my life. When you were little, I thought about supporting you to go to college, and then I would take your mother to grow a little land at home, work from sunrise to sunset and take care of you in your old age. But I didn't expect that the times would develop so fast. When you graduated from college, we knew that if we had no money, no car, and no house, we would not be able to marry a wife, so we moved to Haicheng with your mother, worked hard to buy a house, and waited for you to bring us a daughter-in-law. In the first half of your father's life, you were basically dragged forward, so. At this point, Lu Qinming sat up and looked at Lu Yu in front of him with a smile. I have decided that I will live here with your mother in the future. Let's just sell the original house. Anyway, the current real estate market is not good. Selling it early can reduce the loss. What do you think? Lu Yu was slightly stunned. Dad, don't you think this place is too empty? Lu Qinming snorted, is it empty? Soon our family will have 4 little ancestors. By then, there will be 8 of us. Do you still feel empty? Lu Yu slapped his forehead and thought, oh my god, I forgot about this. Okay, then we'll live here and we won't sell the old house. I happen to have kept my eldest son here and he's helping me with finances, so I'll leave the house to him. Lu Qinming's eyes flickered. Ask for less money. He understood what Lu Qinming meant. If he didn't want money, first of all, Tong Junlin would definitely not accept it given his personality. The most important thing was that it didn't take long for a favor to be repaid with a big one, so feelings were feelings, and he had to do what he had to do. Now that he has the ability, he can help his brothers if he wants to, but he cannot have no bottom line. After a moment's silence, Lu Yu stood up and said, okay, I got it. I'll call the boss later. At this time, Liang Xuanzi, who was not far away, suddenly shouted, husband, come here quickly, there is a rainbow here, come. Lu Yu smiled and nodded, I'm coming. The family of 4 stayed in the courtyard of Genting Mansion until the sun set. After an afternoon of adaptation, Wang Yun gradually got used to the fact that this was their own property. Plus, the environment here is really good. Apart from anything else, just looking at the scenery and listening to the sound of water here every day is a huge comfort to people's psychology. In just this afternoon, the smile on her face never disappeared. Standing in the huge hall of more than 50 square meters, Wang Yun sighed heavily and glared at Lu Yu unhappily. Stinky boy, where is the kitchen? Let's go see what dishes are available first. Lu Yu happily lay on her back. Mom, have you decided? Wang Yun sneered. Will it be useful if I don't make a decision? Look at your father's behavior. If you don't know, you would think he earned this house. Lu Qinming, who was video chatting with an old friend, was caught in the crossfire and immediately became unhappy. Hey, Wang Yun, how come this is not earned by me? What my son earns is also earned by me. How can he exist without me? Get out, go buy some groceries. Are you going to let your daughter-in-law do it? Or are you going to let me go? Wang Yun gave him a look, and Lu Qinming immediately gave in. She stood up with a pout and turned off the video. Of course. I'll go. If you want to go, you have to get my permission, right? Son, is there a supermarket here? Lu Yu shrugged and tried to hold back his laughter. No, but there is a supermarket at the gate. You can drive there to buy it. Lu Qinming almost vomited blood when he heard this. No wonder he had such a big reaction. If this place was nearly 1 kilometer away from the gate, at this time, he suddenly felt that the original little house was also pretty good. Liang Xuanzi chuckled beside him and said, Dad, why don't you and I go buy it? You and Mom can just wait here. No need, I'll go. Seeing Liang Xuanzi was about to stand up, Lu Qinming hurried out. It's just 1 kilometer. Did he really think that walking dozens of miles as a child was in vain? Not to mention that his daughter-in-law is pregnant. Even if she is not pregnant, he would still be reluctant to let her go. After watching Lu Qinming leave, Liang Xuanzi suddenly said, Husband, we are now living in such a big house, shouldn't we consider hiring some servants? After all, if there were no staff to clean such a big house and yard, we would waste a lot of time cleaning it every day. Wang Yun's eyes flickered as she nodded. Son, we can consider this. Xiaozi is pregnant with quadruplets. Even if your father and I watch over them when they are born, there will inevitably be emissions. We will have to find 2 nannies to look after them. Lu Yu pondered for a moment and said, Okay, I'll ask someone tomorrow to see if there's a suitable one. There just so happens to be a few side rooms next door, so we can let them move in then. Chapter 22 Signing. After dinner, Lu Qinming and Wang Yun walked into their bedroom on the 2nd floor. The huge bedroom of 40 square meters made the two people who had lived for most of their lives feel like they were in a dream. Even after they finished taking a shower and lay on the bed, they were still staring at each other. Suddenly, Wang Yun raised her hand and slapped Lu Qinming. Oh my god, Lu Qinming sat up with a start, looking at Wang Yun with a conflicted mind. No, wife, even if you want to hit me, at least give me a reason, right? Does it hurt? Wang Yun laughed. Lu Qinming rolled his eyes and said, Nonsense, why don't you try slapping yourself 10 times? Wang Yun curled her lips. It's okay if it hurts, that means it's real, go to sleep. Lu Qinming was confused. No, you hit me just to confirm whether this was true. Opposite the double bedroom is the master bedroom of the entire villa, which is even larger than the living room below. It not only includes a small dressing room, but also a separate large bathroom, toilet, dressing room, including a small home theater and esports room. In addition to these, there is a bedroom of nearly 30 square meters. On a super large soft bed of 3 meters by 3 meters, Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi were lying on it, hugging each other, whispering to each other. But this warm scene was broken by a sudden phone call. Lu Yu looked at the caller ID on his phone with tears in his eyes. He answered the call with a lot of resentment and said, Director Yu, disturbing someone's sleep is not a good thing. Yu Haohan on the other end of the phone was choked by these words. He coughed several times before calming down. He smiled bitterly and said, Mr. Lu, I'm telling you that the visa and passport you need are already prepared for you. Do you want to send them to you? Or? All right. Lu Yu's eyes flickered, and he was somewhat surprised. After all, for ordinary people, it was basically impossible to get a visa without 10 days or half a day. He originally thought that he would have to wait for at least 5 days, but he didn't expect that Yu Haohan only took 2 days to get it done. Indeed, money can do so many things. Shaking his head to get rid of the messy thoughts in his mind, Lu Yu said, Okay, just have someone send it to Yunding Mansion for me tomorrow. Okay, I'll arrange it later so as not to disturb Mr. Liu's sweet dreams, har har. Listening to the laughter coming from the phone, Liu couldn't help laughing himself. Director Yu, wait a minute, since it's already been done, then do another one. I'll have someone send the information to your phone later. Good. After hanging up the phone, Liu realized that Liang Xuanz's expression was a little strange. After thinking about it, he understood Liang Xuanz's thoughts. He hugged her in his arms and patted her back gently. Wife, I'm sorry. Liang Xuanzi shook her head. It's okay, I know, but my husband has to come back soon, and you have to accompany me these few days, hee hee. Good. Jingting Building, top floor office. Liu casually flipped through Tong Junlin's financial report. Youngest brother, this is the situation. There was no discrepancy in the overall financial report of Jingting Building last quarter, but Tianxin property was short of 10,000. According to President Xia, he proposed the 1 million 2 months ago. He didn't say what it was used for. But Tianxin property was still owned by President Xia at that time, so I took the initiative to suppress it. If you think it's inappropriate, I'll discuss it with President Xia. Liu waved his hand, put the financial report down, and looked up at Tong Junlin opposite him. Boss, you are awesome, forget about the 1 million, after all, it's your own money, as long as there is no problem with the finances this quarter. By the way, have you found a place to live? Tong Junlin smiled and nodded. How can I not find it? It's nearby, with 2 bedrooms and a living room. Although the rent is a bit high, it's nothing compared to the salary. At this point, Tong Junlin sighed. Youngest, thank you. Liu stood up and put the financial report into the file bag, handed it back to Tong Junlin, and patted him on the shoulder. Let's go, I'll take you somewhere. Tong Junlin was slightly stunned. Although he didn't understand why, he still followed. Half an hour later, Tong Junlin walked into Liu's old house with confusion, especially when Liu took out the property certificate. He was even more confused. No, youngest, this. Liu put his arm around his shoulders and chuckled. I don't need this house anymore, so I'm selling it to you. But I know you don't have money now, so I'll deduct 20,000 from your salary every month and 10,000 for the house. After 50 months, this house will belong to you. Tong Junlin flipped open the property certificate, looked at his name on it, and suddenly stuffed the property certificate back into Liu's hand, frowning and saying, Youngest, Liu, what do you mean by this? Don't think I don't know that this house is now at least 2 million. Who are you looking down on? I don't want it. If you really want to sell it to me, it will be 2 million. Liu's mouth twitched slightly. I knew it would be like this, but this house is just gathering dust here. Even if I rent it out, how much rent can I get a year? 100,000. Or less. Don't forget how bad the current housing market is. How much will this place be worth in 10 years? Who can tell? So don't bother to talk to me here. It's decided. At most, you can help me keep an eye on my wallet a little more in the future. Tong Junlin opened his mouth, wanting to say something but stopped himself. At this time, Liu took out a passport and visa and stuffed them into his hand. You did a good job. The day after tomorrow, come with me to Kokoli Island to attend MAF's quarterly summary meeting. Tong Junlin's eyes were red, biting his lower lip. He suddenly raised his hand and hit Liu on the shoulder, then raised his hand and hugged him. We are brothers in this life, youngest brother. If you find that I have done anything to let you down in this life, just kill me. As he said that, he patted Liu's back fiercely. Thanks, I want this house. I will be there on time the day after tomorrow. Fetal Liu was almost vomiting blood after being hit by this guy. He kicked Tong Junlin's calf in anger and said, You want to murder me? Get lost now. Go to Fanglong Group in the next 2 days. I have already said hello to Director Yu. Just take it as a chance to get familiar with the environment there. Okay. Tong Junlin agreed readily. At this moment, he was full of gratitude towards Liu. Although 20,000 yuan was deducted from his salary every month, he didn't have to pay rent, and he still had a salary of 30,000 yuan every month, which was enough for him to live comfortably in this city and still have a lot left to pay off his debts. He must remember this kindness. Liu handed him the key and patted his shoulder. By the way, I also have a 20% stake in Dosha. After you come back from Kokoli Island this time, you can also take some time to go over and have a look. Finally, if you feel that you are too busy, you can hire a few more people to help you. You can decide the salary. Just make a list for me when the time comes. Having said this, Liu paused, and suddenly said softly, finally, Mu Qingwan is back. After saying that, Lu Yu patted his shoulder again and left. It was not until he heard the sound of a door closing behind him that Tong Junlin suddenly came back to his senses and turned around quickly. Youngest brother, stop right there, Mu Qingwan is back, why the hell tell me where she works? At the elevator entrance, Lu Yu raised his hand and waved, Haicheng Third Hospital. Downstairs. When Lu Yu came out, his Hongqi HS9 just stopped in front of him. The next moment, Liang Xuanzi's little head popped out from inside and winked playfully, hubby, you're overtime tilde. Looking at the naughty Liang Xuanzi in front of him, Lu Yu, who was afraid that she would do something shocking, quickly raised his hand, yes, I was wrong, tell me, if you want to punish me, I accept it. Poochie tilde, Liang Xuanzi couldn't help laughing, then I'll punish you by making you accompany me shopping. Lu Yu. Liang Xuanzi ignored Lu Yu's twisted face, quickly opened the car door and ran to the passenger seat. Facing Liang Xuanzi's impatient movements, all the horrible images of shopping in Lu Yu's mind disappeared, leaving only deep worry. Chapter 23 Goodbye Luo Tingting. Fuck you tilde Liang Xuanzi, do you believe I will beat you up if you do this again? Do you want to die? Lu Yu carefully sent her to the co-pilot seat, then he breathed a sigh of relief, and then raised his hand and knocked her on the forehead in annoyance. I'm telling you, if you do it again, your strategy level will drop. Liang Xuanzi made a naughty face, Lululu tilde I know, stinky husband, hee hee. From this expression, it's clear that he didn't listen. But then he laughed himself. After tapping Liang Xuanzi on the forehead again, he walked to the driver's seat and drove away. It's not that he is careless, but he is too clear about the physical condition rewarded by the system. Now he is not only extremely strong, but his brain thinking, agility, speed, and even resistance have increased a lot. Now Liang Xuanzi's physical fitness has increased by nearly 30 points. If there is still a problem with this physical fitness, then he really has nothing to say. More than 10 minutes later, Lu Yu parked the car in the temporary parking space of Qindar Plaza, walked to the passenger side, and prepared to carry Liang Xuanzi down. But just as he opened the car door, a clear and surprised voice came from behind him, hey, handsome uncle, come and see the face. Lu Yu was slightly stunned, then he casually picked up Liang Xuanzi and looked behind him. About 5 or 6 meters away, the little girl Luo Tingting was running happily with her ponytail swinging. But when she saw Liang Xuanzi, she slammed the brakes, but because of the sudden impact of her ribs, she fell to the ground with a bang. Lu Yu stared at her in amazement, and only reacted when she fell to the ground. He quickly ran over, pulled her up from the ground and held her in his arms. It's you? So careless. Are you hurt? Luo Tingting ignored Lu Yu completely, and stared straight at Liang Xuanzi not far away. Her big round eyes seemed to have seen something incredible, which made Lu Yu, who was old, helplessly hugged her and walked over. Hey, this is my wife, Aunt Liang Xuanzi, so you can't let your uncle be your father anymore tilde. Luo Tingting finally reacted and looked at Liang Xuanzi again. The light in her eyes disappeared immediately. She sighed and said, hey tilde, I told mom a long time ago that I should act sooner rather than later. Now it's too late. How come such a good uncle has become someone else's husband? Few tilde. This sentence made Liang Xuanzi laugh. Seeing Liang Xuanzi laughing, Luo Tingting's eyes widened again, and then he sighed again. Forget it, my mother is far inferior to my aunt, I won't let her come over to touch my nose, handsome uncle, beautiful aunt. Luo Tingting. Luo Tingting hadn't finished speaking when an angry voice came from behind them. The next moment, Luo Tingting's mother came in front of the three of them. When she saw Lu Yu, Luo's mother was obviously stunned for a moment, and when she saw Liang Xuanzi, a light flashed in her eyes, so beautiful. Luo Tingting broke free from Lu Yu's arms, tugged at the corner of her mother's clothes, and said angrily, is that so? Uncle Shuai's wife is so beautiful, you have no hope. I told you to listen to me but you didn't. Are you upset now? Mother Luo's pretty face turned red, and she tapped the little girl's forehead unhappily. What are you talking about, you silly girl? Luo Tingting tilted her head. Tsk tilde, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Tilde Uncle Handsome, we meet again so soon, isn't it fate? It's not too much to treat me to a cup of milk tea, right? Luo Tingting, shut up. Luo's mother was anxious. After she finished her lecture, she quickly said to Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi, I'm sorry, I spoiled this child. So, I'll treat you to a meal as an apology. Liang Xuanzi smiled and shook her head. No, Tingting is very cute. Tingting, do you want to go buy milk tea with auntie? Luo Tingting's eyes lit up. Okay. Hey, mommy, let go. Mother Luo grabbed the little girl's ears, bowed to the two of them again apologetically, then quickly left with the little girl in her arms. Looking at the backs of the two, Liang Xuanzi couldn't help but giggle and took Lu Yu's arm. Sir, how come this girl is so cute? Lu Yu chuckled. Really? I still think my big baby is cuter. Liang Xuanzi blushed, looked at Lu Yu tenderly, and suddenly raised her head and kissed him on the face. Bad husband, you always tease me suddenly, so bad. Har har har, do you like it? Lu Yu laughed and took her hand and walked into the supermarket. Feeling the warmth in her palm, Liang Xuanzi smiled softly, suddenly hugged Lu Yu and lay on his back. Your big baby likes it very much. Lu Yu was frightened by this girl again. He quickly moved her from his back to the front and hugged her with a smile. When can you let me rest assured? Can the child withstand your touching like this? I'm so happy. Liang Xuanzi pouted and complained. Ding! The host is detected to be doting on the target person. The target person's happiness value is increased, and he gets +1 physical fitness, 300,000 cash, and +1 physical fitness. Now, 300,000 yuan in cash has completely lost its appeal to Lu Yu. He silently added physical strength to Liang Xuanzi, and then put her down. Let's go. Let's make a deal. It's 2 hours at most. After that, you have to go home, otherwise your mother-in-law will scold me again. Liang Xuanzi nodded quickly. Yes, I will call my mother-in-law later. I will definitely not let my husband be scolded. Lu Yu. Is this what I meant? Evening. Lu Yu walked out of the mall holding Liang Xuanzi's hand. I am here to shop with nothing in my hands. Looking at Liang Xuanzi who was humming happily beside him, Lu Yu pinched her face with a smile. Are you happy? Liang Xuanzi nodded repeatedly. Happy. After saying that, she leaned her head on Lu Yu's shoulder. I'm happy because my husband is with me. He, husband, you are so nice. Lu Yu opened his mouth and said, okay, after walking around for most of the day, it's worth it just to hear these words. Feeling their weight gradually increasing on his body, he tilted his head to take a look, then simply raised his hand and hugged her by the waist. The sudden feeling of being in the air made Liang Xuanzi couldn't help but let out a cry. She instinctively hugged Lu Yu tightly with both hands, pouting angrily. Stinky husband, next time you hold the baby, can you say hello first? Lu Yu chuckled. Guess. Forget about it, tilde. Liang Xuanzi turned her head away proudly, not wanting to pay attention to him. But she couldn't help it, secretly turning her eyes and glancing at Lu Yu's face, wanting to see if he would coax her. That look made Lu Yu's girlish heart explode. Next to them, couples were coming and going in 2s and 3s. When they saw the two of them, they all showed envious expressions. Some of the more sentimental girls even focused their attention on the boyfriends beside them. In an instant, countless boys felt the trembling of their souls. Especially a big boy whose girlfriend weighs more than 150 kilograms, he looked at Lu Yu with resentment. If his girlfriend hadn't held his hand, he would have wanted to run away. Ouch, it hurts so much, you have no conscience, you hit someone and then just left, you want to hurt me to death. Just as Lu Yu and Liang Xuanzi were approaching the parking space, they suddenly heard bursts of wailing coming from a parking space not far away. Liang Xuanzi was stunned for a moment. There are still people like this now? They run away after bumping into someone. Do they really think they can't be caught? Tilde. Lu Yu was also a little confused. Although there were many traffic accidents nowadays, hit and run was definitely news. After all, urban network monitoring was so advanced nowadays. How could he escape for a while and still escape for a lifetime? However, there were many passers-by in front of them, so the two of them couldn't see what was going on. In addition, given Liang Xuanzi's current physical condition, Lu Yu decided to ignore it. He still had the strength to shout, and his life was definitely not in danger. Besides, with so many people present, he didn't believe that no one called an ambulance. But when they squeezed through the crowd and walked in, the couple was instantly amused by the scene in front of them. In front of their car, an old woman who looked to be in her 50s at most was sitting there, hugging her knees and holding the ground with one hand. What do you call this? A disaster from the sky? Chapter 24. Two people. No matter how kind-hearted Lu Yu was, he was angry at this moment. He put Liang Xuanzi on the ground, walked straight to the woman and said, Auntie, isn't that too much? The old woman's eyes lit up, and her voice suddenly rose an octave. It was you, it was you who hit me and left me here alone. How could you be so mean? How could I blackmail you? Oh, God, please open your eyes. What kind of world is this? The people around also began to point fingers at Lu Yu and talk about him. Lu Yu smiled, but with a cold expression on his face. He pointed at a camera on the upper right and said, "Auntie, even if you want to frame someone, at least find a more reliable car, right? This car of mine has been parked here before 10 o'clock this morning. You tell me that I hit you? The camera above is watching. I don't understand. You look about the same age as my mother, and you are nimble. Why don't you do something else? Fraud." At this time, a man in his 30s came out, looked at Lu Yu and said, "Brother, are you sure you stopped here at 10 o'clock in the morning?" Lu Yu's eyes flickered. "Do you need me to adjust the surveillance?" The man suddenly realized and was about to speak, but the woman panicked and said hurriedly, "You're talking nonsense. You've only been here for an hour. Look here, there's still blood from the injury you caused when you hit me." Looking at the dried color marks on the ground, the passers-by who had just gathered around were confused again. Because the temporary parking spaces here are close to the side, usually no one comes here except for people who park their cars, so they really can't tell what happened. Lu Yu was completely enraged this time. "Okay, I think you won't cry until you see the coffin, let's let the police come and talk." Seeing Lu Yu took out his cell phone, the woman was stunned. She stood up quickly and rushed towards Lu Yu. "No, this matter can be negotiated. You just need to compensate me 1,000 yuan and we can settle it privately. Otherwise, the police will come and delay you for a long time." As soon as these words were spoken, all the onlookers laughed. After so many years of being influenced by the internet, who would still be a fool now? If you really get hit, would you be afraid to call the police? They still ask for money right away. This is not a scam. They dare to cut off their heads and use them as chamber pots. All of a sudden, everyone looked at the old woman, and the discussion became louder. Hearing the sound, the woman's face changed drastically, and then she sat down on the ground, slapping her hands on the ground. People nowadays have no respect for the elderly at all. I was hit like this, and you still falsely accuse me. How can you be so mean? At this time, Liang Xuanzi came over. In order to prevent the woman from attacking and hurting others, she hid behind Lu Yu and looked at the old woman angrily. "Just wait, I'll call the police, and they will be here soon, Tilda." The old woman was dumbfounded. She glanced at the onlookers and didn't care about those who were filming the video. She stood up quickly, glared at Liang Xuanzi fiercely, and ran outside. Lu Yu grabbed her and said, "Auntie, please wait a moment, otherwise we won't be able to explain when the police come. We don't want to bear the cost of making a false report, so please. Let me go." The woman said anxiously, "I don't want compensation. You won't even let me get treatment myself. What on earth are you thinking?" Lu Yu sneered, "No, I really don't need the money, so let the police make the judgment first. If it is my fault, I will definitely treat you, even if you have to stay in the hospital for the rest of your life. Do you think I can afford the money?" Parking lot. Lu Yu held the old woman tightly and refused to let go. The old woman struggled hard, but in front of Lu Yu, whose physique was nearly 5 times that of an ordinary person, her struggle was obviously in vain. At this time, a slightly surprised voice came over. "Huh? Lu Yu, it's you? What's going on?" Lu Yu turned his head and looked over. A chuckle appeared on his face. "It's you too. Boss, you're fast enough. I just told you, and you went to find it." Tong Junlin blushed slightly. "Don't change the subject, what's going on?" Liang Xuanzi was now quite familiar with Tong Junlin, so she immediately told him what had happened. After listening, Tong Junlin and Mu Qingwan beside him were dumbfounded. Mu Qingwan, in particular, looked at the old woman in front of her as if she were a fool. "Auntie, your method of scamming someone is a bit cruel. If you want to scam someone, at least wait for them to drive the car out. The car didn't even move. What were you thinking?" The old woman looked at the young man with gritted teeth and wanted to say something, but there were so many people around, and many of them were taking videos. She thought this trip was a failure, so she simply responded in silence. Lu Yu didn't indulge her. "Big campus beauty, aren't you a doctor? Come, before the police come, check this auntie to see if she is injured." Although Mu Qingwan didn't know what Lu Yu was planning, based on her understanding of Lu Yu, she knew he definitely had no good intentions. However, Mu Qingwan really didn't tolerate these scammers, so she nodded immediately. "Okay, auntie, I'm the chief physician of the 3rd Hospital of Haicheng. Where are you injured? Let me take a look for you. As soon as Mu Qingwan finished speaking, a little girl in the crowd shouted, her leg was injured, but I don't know which leg it was, because she was holding one leg and then the other. Har har. Okay, I'll laugh for a while. The little girl's words made everyone laugh, except for the old woman whose face turned even darker. Amidst the laughter, the police car arrived and 2 policemen came over. After taking a look at the scene, they asked, "What on earth is going on?" Liu Yu let go of the old woman, walked up to the policeman with a smile and explained, "It's like this. I brought my wife here to go shopping this morning. We parked our car here around 10 o'clock. But when I was about to take my wife home, this person sat in front of my car and insisted that I hit her and demanded $1,000 in compensation. If you don't believe me, the surveillance camera here is very close and you can check it at any time." The police were also stunned after hearing this, staring at the old woman in amazement. One of the younger police officers was outspoken and asked on the spot, "Auntie, this is too much. You are not just hitting someone, this is blackmail, understand? You will go to jail. Yes, this is no different from extortion. What a fool this guy is. He looks to be in his 50s and is very nimble. Why doesn't he think about finding a proper job? She's going to be famous now. I wonder what her son and husband's expressions will be when they see this. Come on, what if their whole family is like this?" As the policeman spoke, the surrounding discussion became louder. The woman was so angry that her face turned red. "Well, I don't want the money now, can I leave?" The police shook his head. "We must send the police when reporting a crime. This is our rule. Since you have indeed committed a crime, you must go back with us to clarify the cause and effect of the matter, and then decide whether you can leave, but..." At this point, the police officer shook his head and said, "My disciple just said that what you did is already a crime of extortion. Although you didn't get any money, it was also an attempted extortion, so the minimum 7-day detention is inevitable. Now come with us." When she heard that she was going to jail, the old woman was stunned. The next moment, she collapsed on the ground and cried loudly, "I won't go back with you. I didn't commit any crime. I didn't ask for money. You can't arrest me. God, please open your eyes." The 2 policemen looked at each other, then called the command center directly. The young policeman walked up to the old woman and sighed, "Auntie, it's useless for you to cry here. If you refuse to execute the order, you will be charged with the crimes of arrest and obstruction of public service. Then it will not be 7 days. I don't care, I won't go with you, I want to go home, you can't catch me." The woman refused to give in. The young policeman turned around and glanced at his master. Seeing that his master nodded, he stepped forward, pressed the old woman to the ground, and put handcuffs on her. "I'm sorry, since you don't cooperate with the investigation, we will enforce your sentence. Let's go." Feeling her hands being handcuffed, the old woman cried even harder. But it was obvious that her crying did not attract any sympathy, but instead caused more ridicule.